we go. All right, good evening. So sorry for the delay. Today is Tuesday, January 17th at 5:34. I'd like to call our Teaching, Learning, Equity, and Pupil Services Committee to order. Ms. Schopp, may we please have a roll call for attendance?
Yes. Joanne Winfield.
Here.
Greg Schneider.
Present.
Megan Miller.
Present.
All members are present in the boardroom.
Thank you so much. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to approve our agenda.
So move. Second.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes unanimously. That takes us to item 1D, approval of the minutes. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the December 20th meeting from 2022?
So move.
Second. Okay, any discussion? Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, and that passes unanimously. Thank you so much. And that brings us to our only agenda item for the evening, which we're excited to hear about, our K-12 literacy update. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Ms. Moratek. Thank you.
Good evening, committee. Yes, Teresa Mortek, Executive Director of Teaching and Learning and Equity, and I have Tony Bosco here, Director in the Teaching and Learning Equity team. He leads a lot of our literacy work and working with our coaches as well. So what we wanted to do tonight was just to give you a mid-year update and let you know how it's been going in our ARC implementation and also our other work with literacy in the secondary schools. So this is really a coalescing of lots of pieces that are coming together, and we're excited to see some of the initial academic outcomes. So we just kind of an overview, we approached the improvement of literacy in our school district of Beloit last year when we developed, the previous year when we developed the vision for literacy. We ran many empathy groups throughout the district to define how we see literacy in the school district of Beloit and what we want. And then we wanted to approach improvement and continuous improvement from a braided approach, which is high quality materials and instructional practices. And that's really critical to understand because we know that no boxed set of materials is one magic piece, but it's essential that you have high quality rated materials that are aligned to the standards. And then along with that, we have been working on instructional practices. So it's not just what we're teaching, but how we're teaching it. And so with our ARC Adoption American Reading Company that we did with our ESSER funds, we started that work partnering with the American Reading Company to not just get the materials, but we've done district-wide professional development, and then we've professional learning, and then we've also had coaches from our company that are assigned to the schools to have individual kind of differentiated coaching to meet the needs of the schools. And then with Springboard, which is our secondary, we have our grant that is through the Department of Public Instruction that is an extension of high quality materials that lended us the opportunity to partner with instruction partners through that grant. And so in the work with instruction partners, we've been looking at we had already Springboard, so how we are improving the instructional practices and implementation of Springboard. And so they have been working last year, they worked with 2 of our intermediates, this year with all 4. And have brought in an instructional practice tool. They have done this in literacy and actually in math as well, but focus tonight is literacy. So Tony is here to give us the overview of how all of those pieces are coming together and some of the initial findings that we're having. We're excited to see the work that's happening, and we are pivoting into year 3 implementation with ARC, so forward planning about where our needs are and what we need to do for professional learning to build sustainability. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Good evening, Teaching, Learning, Equity, and Pupil Services Committee. Thank you for having us this evening. My name is Tony Bosco. I'm the Director of Instructional Leadership and Equity for the School District Beloit. And I'm very excited to be here tonight. I think as Ms. Moratek alluded to, the work that we've been doing is not just this year. It hasn't just been a couple years, and it won't be a couple years into the future. This is really a work of passion and a work of need as we look at our literacy practices, our literacy data in the School District Beloit. When we look at literacy in the School District Beloit, we developed these goals that you see on the screen based on our 3-year implementation plan. And really what we're focusing on, anytime you look at implementation science, it is a process. It is a very clear process, and we're trying to be very diligent in how we navigate that process, understanding that as you go from year 1 to year 2, year 2 to year 3, through subsequent years of this adoption, not just with the American Reading Company, but with Springboard as well, that we're expecting to have growth that is quantifiable as a result of our efforts, our time, our commitment. I'd be remiss before I get any further in not recognizing Ms. Moratek, myself, are only 2 people. We have a cadre of English language arts teachers, biliteracy instructional coaches, instructional leaders all over the district that are committed to this implementation. And I just want to raise that none of this work is possible without them. And they're at the ground level doing this work every single day with students. And I just want to thank them because it's anytime you bring some new resources in the district, there's a bit of a learning curve, and they've really been game for the change. So I'm super excited to highlight some of the work that they've done. Again, as we progress through this initial implementation, we're really looking by 25-26 to be at 25% proficient advanced across the district. That's a lofty goal in 3 years. I'm sorry, 55%. That's a lofty goal in 3 years, but that's something that we're really looking to press on very hard over the course of the next several years. We're going to kind of do this in 2 segments. We're going to focus on K-5 and implementation with American Reading Company, and then we'll transition to our implementation or relaunch with Springboard. Teresa talked about the work that we did with DPI a couple of years ago on implementation science, and then also using high-quality instructional materials and pairing that with high-quality instruction. And so we've learned a lot of those lessons and have used those lessons to help us develop implementation plans that really are based in that implementation science that I referred to, and you're going to see some of those key components as I go through the presentation. Specifically with American Reading Company, one of the things that we were really enamored with as we went through the adoption process was the quality of their professional development. And Teresa alluded to the concept of them being on-site multiple times a year, but we also thought that it was very important for us to be able to calibrate our entire literacy staff, K-5, and make sure that we have common understandings. One of the things that we have seen as we went through the adoption process, and even in the first year and a half of implementation, is the idea that our teachers at the elementary level are not all teachers of reading. And this resource really helps us focus on that very intentional approach to foundational literacy development with our students. And that's been a great resource for us because when you talk about 3rd grade teachers, 4th grade teachers, kindergarten teachers, being very explicit about how we want students to progress through that literacy development kind of continuum has been wonderful in terms of deepening our knowledge of pedagogy, of curriculum, and how to use this resource well. So that's one thing that's been very important and key to the successes that we have experienced and will continue to experience. The next thing is just what Teresa talked about was the idea that multiple times per year, each one of our elementary and intermediate schools will have 3 on-site coaching cycles with the coaches from American Reading Company. And the reason this is important is because this takes that kind of 10,000-foot view of that professional learning that we do in August, November, and February, and really takes it down to the classroom level, where that art coach is sitting with our biliteracy and literacy instructional coaches and those teacher partners and really digging into their data, really digging into their instructional practice and trying to help them make those adjustments in the moment, which is where it's most valuable. Oh, geez, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I'm a Kansas fan too.
That's an awesome ringtone, but it shouldn't be going off right now. I apologize. So the on-site cycles of our coaches But as we look at that on-site coaching, we're also very aware of the fact that being with American Reading Company for 5, 10, 12 years, we're looking to gradually release responsibility for that professional learning to the district. And so that's something that we've started to explore with support with American Reading Company, where some of the nuance of each of the individual reading levels within the system take a lot of time and effort to unpack and understand. And so we've developed some color level studies at the yellow and green levels, which are kindergarten into first grade, so that our teachers and our coaches can really dig deeply into what those foundational skills are and really understand if a student is struggling with phonemic awareness, how do we address that? If it's phonological, what are we doing in response using the toolkits and other resources that we have in the ARC framework to address that student's needs? And then lastly, before I move to the next slide, we've really developed, again, a concept of instructional leadership at the building level is a team game, really helping our instructional leaders at the building level. I referred to coaches, but also our assistant principals and principals to understand this framework and sit with the staff from ARC and really build their background knowledge and understanding. So as they're going through classrooms, they know what they're expecting to inspecting to expect. So that leadership learning series has really been an opportunity for our coaches and our principals to collaborate on some of those framework components. The next part that I'm going to talk about is the key aspects of the ARC framework that are really high leverage for us. The 4 most important pieces that we see are that equitable conference schedule, the idea that students are getting direct instruction that is very purposeful, whether it's through a morning message at the K-1-2 level or a more prescribed or more focused direct instruction lesson from the teacher, and then establishing power goals for every single student. The idea that every K-5 student in the school district of Beloit has a power goal that they are working on that will help them move from what they're currently at as far as their reading level to where we're trying to get them. And the students are very in tune to what those individual skills are that they're working on. And we also do a lot to communicate with families about what they're working on when they bring their book bags home, what those bookmarks are telling them as far as what color level they're in and what those proximal skills to get to the next level would be. Also, 2 other aspects of the K-5 implementation are really being focused in how our biliteracy instructional coaches are supporting the PLCs, whether that's within the building at the K-3 level or grade level at the 4-5 level. I just want to kind of spend some time focusing on the independent reading level assessment. This is a key aspect of this entire framework because it is really the launch for how that teacher knows every student as a reader. We have really worked hard to develop this process so that no matter where the student is in their reading journey, their teacher knows where they are and where they're trying to get to next. And so the independent reading level assessment and that conferencing schedule is critical to making sure that we're meeting the needs of learners wherever they are in this continuum. If they're at the proficient or advanced level, they're going to be conferenced with once every week or 2. If they're at the striving or at-risk level, they're going to have a couple of conferences a week. If they're at the emergency level, they're going to be conferenced with by a teacher almost every day. Okay? Again, this is year 1.5 of implementation. So getting to this ideal is something that we're working on, but we look at conferencing data regularly. And we can see in school pace the percentage of students that are meeting this framework for conferencing. And when we see discrepancies, we're talking to coaches, we're talking to principals, we're talking about teachers about what do you need? How can we support? What structures are not in place so that we can, get this moving? Because again, this individualized approach to reading for every learner is a critical aspect of this. And then this last piece is just, and I know it's a little hard to see on the slide, I apologize, but this basically shows a January of 23 comparison to January of 22. And at the K-5 level, district-wide, we're up about 10% proficiency-wise. At the 4-5, it's a little flat, more flat, and at the elementary level, K3, it's a little bit more robust. But this, again, gives us an opportunity to say, where can we affirm the practices that are resulting in student achievement growth? Where are we also looking to allocate some more resources so we can address some of the other challenges that might be there?
The only thing I would add is at the bottom, you'll see that I think this one is, when he took the snapshot, was 33% proficiency. So if you go back to our alignment goals, we had 35% for at the end of this year. So we'll need to, and these are based on our benchmarks. So the students are currently 33% meeting their benchmarks, but they have to continue with the rigor to get to the end of the year to meet end of the year benchmarks at 35%. So this is good news because we're headed right towards the end of the year goal that we wanted to get at. And then, in thinking about in our strategic plan, we have meeting and exceeding goals by the end of 25-26 under the whole child. So in knowing that if we get to 55% proficiencies, that'll helpfully contribute to boosting us to meeting and exceeding expectations identified in our strategic plan.
Okay. Now we're going to transition to Springboard, okay? So when we, as I said, we went through the DPI grant where we're looking at high quality instructional materials and high quality instructional practices. And as we're going through the ARC adoption and doing the work to kind of assess what direction we wanted to go with that, it caused us to kind of step back and review Springboard, because at the time you have this question based on ed reports and some other data, is this a resource that meets our needs? And I think we've been with Springboard, using Springboard for about 10 years now. And the answer to that question was, we need to relaunch, because as we're coming out of the pandemic, there had been some changes in leadership within my position, director positions, and we needed to just recalibrate the district around the use of this resource and the intentionality around some of the key aspects of it. So that really started when we did the implementation plan for ARC. We kind of aligned both of them to have that restart at the same time. Very similar opportunities as we implement this resource at the 6 through 12 level. We're using some very similar systems and structures to have an integrous implementation. That starts with really having a strong partnership, with instruction partners who we connected with as part of that DPI grant, and their ability to help us zero in on some of those key aspects of prioritizing our standards, understanding the design of units and the arc of units, and understanding the design and implementation of lessons. So through our professional development that we do, professional learning, that we do several times a year, Instruction Partners has partnered with us and with our coaches to have that professional learning happen in an ongoing way, so that as we go out into buildings and we come back and debrief, and that really develops our cadence for what our partners with Instruction Partners focus on as we come up to February 10th, for instance. So that really aligns the work that we're doing from the beginning of the school year to the end of the school year. Another critical aspect of this is just the role of instructional coaches in this work. Our literacy or our language arts teachers 6 through 12 are you talk about the 4 intermediate schools, often in a grade level, they are a singleton. There is one 6th grade language arts teacher at McNeil, one at Aldridge. So if their ability to collaborate is difficult, but our coaches are able to kind of be a conduit between the PLCs to help them align around our curricula. And so that's very important that with any implementation going forward with a reconfiguration, having some of these structures that will continue. And the last part, and I kind of skipped over this a little bit with the ARC, but another similar structure is the literacy learning walks that Teresa and I do and Rosa Maria did with us going back to last year. This idea of us going into a building, sitting down and collaboratively exploring their data, doing some walkthroughs, some learning walks, coming back and debriefing about what we saw, and then collaboratively developing an action plan for them to move forward with has been, another thing that I think it will continue to be a part of our implementation for the foreseeable future. Another aspect of the work that we're doing with instruction partners is this kind of focus on instructional practice. And that really kind of goes back to this protocol called the Instructional Practice Guide. And this is a tool that we use that really helps us identify in language arts courses 6 through 12 what those key aspects of instruction are. And then gather data on implementation of that, and then be able to reflect with the practitioner and the coaching team, the instructional team, about what we could do to build that so that we have better student outcomes. Each one of our secondary schools, in collaboration with instruction partners and with ourselves, has developed action plans based on this data, so that every one of them has really looked at their local data, the implementation, the instructional strategies that are being implemented, and identified where they, in an individual building, may have area for growth. And then this is all combined. Our K-5, our 6-12 is really combined with the idea of understanding where we're trying to have students get. And, excuse me, we talk about the ACT, the pre-ACT as a capstone. We spent a lot of time this fall working with the Home of the Purple Knights staff, identifying opportunities to look at data in more deep ways. I just had some. Thank you. I brought my own this time. To look at the data more deeply, I think one of the things that we are really focused on is how we can make those alignments between our curriculum, our instruction, and those outcome data, whether it's curriculum-based assessment data or our standardized assessment data. And we had all of our 9th, 10th, and 11th graders take the pre-ACT back in November. On the November PD, or late October actually, the November Building Report Card Prep Professional Learning Day, College Board came in and helped us do an item analysis. So we dug in with every department at Blakemore High School, home of the Purple Knights, to really assess what that data was telling us, where those curricular challenges are, but also we uncovered some test-taking strategies and other things that we needed to address as well. I'm sorry,
Just want to say, sorry to interrupt you, Tony. This is exciting for us because as we build out our strategic assessment system, bringing in the pre-ACT, this is the first time that we've done this as a district, and then building out what that'll look like going forward and how it informs instruction. We're hoping then that that'll inform from the middle school up through the high school so that we are, improving our ACT scores overall, but just also preparing students and improving proficiencies. So this work is exciting if you're in the world of curriculum instruction or teaching and learning, because it's really getting the high school, no matter what subject you teach, to see how literacy and mathematics are embedded throughout.
So the work that we're doing with pre-ACT data, we're going to be administering the pre-ACT to our 8th graders this spring so that our high school has some data to look at for that incoming group. The other aspect of this is we're trying to build legacy systems and structures. When we look at item analysis, we really need to develop these cycles where it becomes a gradual release, or our PLCs understand this data set, go back to those test booklets, and are really digging deeply into where the holes are curricularly and where we can improve instruction, because it takes both of those to really make improvement. The other thing that I would raise from this slide is just this concept of, as freshmen, and this is the first time freshmen have ever taken an ACT-style test, and there are some crazy question structures that just threw them for a loop. But that growth from 9th to 11th grade is evident in the percentages of questions answered correctly in this data. And this is going to improve because this was our first swing at this this fall. So building this legacy system and structure is going to be beneficial to the district. Where we're headed, really what we're talking about is, as our K-5 instructional coaches continue to build their capacity, really starting to take ownership for some of that professional learning that we're doing, and that's going to be beneficial for our staff and our students. As I talked about, building these pre-ACT structures so that it becomes a legacy part of our system, so that anybody that's working at the 6 through 12, 8th grade through 12th grade level understands how we want to prepare students as they're going to take that ACT in 11th grade. Continue to use our curriculum and data review processes to tighten our curricular alignment and be more focused on that. And then, also to braid that with what we do at the PLC level with our teacher teams, because that data in isolation doesn't produce the instructional adjustments, the curricular adjustments that we need. And then that high quality professional learning. We are in the 18th month of our ARC adoption. We need to commit resources to high level professional learning for our staff 5-7 years out, because that's the only way to sustain this kind of commitment to high achievement. Sorry, I got rushed a little bit at the end there. What questions, or Teresa, anything to wrap?
No, just happy to take questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. It's a great overview of all these different areas. Just want to open it up. Board members have any questions? Go ahead.
Thank you so much for presenting today. Just a couple of questions. How is this information with our goals and what we're really trying to achieve? Is that being sent to the homes of the kids so the parents can have a high level of what our goals are?
That's a great question. We have not, as a department, communicated these goals. Maybe through the strategic plan or something, there'd be an opportunity to do that. I think that's a great idea, though.
Yeah, and on the very fine granular level, every student has their own power goal, and those are communicated. So if a power goal is I will learn my initial consonant sounds, that is identified, and then that's communicated to the family. That's a really important piece, because when we talk about metacognition and students understanding what they need to learn and how they need to learn it, right? And that whole collective efficacy piece. So at that very kind of like ground level, it's being communicated, but all the way up through the system that we're trying to get at, at the end of the day, 55% proficiency, we have not yet done that. So thank you for that.
No problem. Thank you. Book it. I know I bring this up probably every single board meeting.
Oh, yeah. Personal pan pizza, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Is there any way that we can
Yeah.
get something like that implemented where the kid can have a?
Well, I have some good news. There are some schools, and I don't know if they're doing Book It, but what is Gaston doing? I know some schools are starting to do different embedded incentives, in addition with their 100 book challenge. But I'll look into. I know you asked for it, so I'll look into it. Joanne, I appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. Anytime.
And just real quick to that point, there is every student developmentally has a certain number of minutes per day that we expect them to be engaging with text. And so we can monitor this data by building, by classroom, by grade level. And it's very important, one of the things that we worked on with instruction partners as we went through the work with them is the amount of time that students are spending in text every day. And that, when you think about a school day, that family partnership is critical to this process. And every elementary student should be taking their blue book bags home with them that has their book set in it for them to be reading, every night to really practice those routines and get familiar with that text. Adding a slice of pizza or something, I think, could be a very easy next extension.
So, Mr. Bosco, what I would do, and I don't know if this is board. Thank you. I am willing. So if you guys can come up with some data and find out what school has read the most in the month of February, I'm willing to buy that whole school pizza.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
All right.
So if we can get that out, Monica, if you can push something out to say, Dewan Winfield will purchase the whole school. Now, I don't know if my wife is going to see this video, but in the sense of I really would like to see us give these kids some extra push.
Sure.
And that I am willing to do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And last question, do you guys foresee any barriers that we will probably face in the future with this?
Sure. I mean, a barrier that you always think about when you think about implementation is when you have new staff. And so we have to think about how we're going to rotate in new staff and what training they'll get, a mandatory training type of piece to learn the program, and then, and have those expectations for them coming into the fold. And so that's why we've really leaned heavy on our instructional coaches, because they have to be there we're not always going to be able to pay into ARC, the reading company, for professional development, right, and professional learning. We used a lot of our ESSER funds for that, and they're awesome, but they're expensive. And so we've been building and thinking ahead so that we have sustainability. So that's a huge barrier, always to, I want it huge, but it's always a barrier and a consideration is as staff turnover happens, how do you train people into the program?
And I would just add to that, as you get into years 2, 3, 4, 5, it's important for us to keep things fresh and focused. I think it's very important for us to not step back from data, to not step back from this alignment, this kind of real intense vision that we have, because I think that's where you kind of really build that collective around where we're trying to go. So I think that's something else that is something that we're aware of in implementation science that we have to be focused on. So thank you.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you for the excellent questions and comments and offers, Board Member Winfield. I'm going to share my Goodreads account with you, and if I meet a satisfactory amount of books, I'm going to send you my address. Okay. Board Member Schneider?
Okay. Thank you so much for the presentation. I'm really thrilled to see that the focus on data and working with staff to be able to understand what that means and how to adjust the curriculum to move forward. Sometimes it's that piece of transferring what we know from the data to what we need to do that sometimes gets missed. And I'd love to see that focus so that staff can continually begin to monitor on their own and to work with that. I mean, that's a great support is to make it happen. I've seen the new reading program in the elementary schools a few times firsthand. I just love the excitement of the students looking at books or when they're exchanging books or the amount of time that they're talking with other staff about the books that they've read. I think that's crucial to make things work. The other piece I thought is looking at or thinking about with the parents that we work with, that there may be a possibility of maybe working with a class at the high school or a Beloit College to do some basic reading instructional videos that are available to parents, so that if they are struggling to understand what it is, to be able to look at, well, how do I now work with a student, with my child who maybe can't pronounce this word or struggles with that? What are some techniques that we could follow? And that's also then reinforcing those reading skills at the high school, as well as a lot of career skills that go along with that, and a way to really use all of our students then benefit for those kinds of things.
Absolutely.
As well as then the parents have them, or anybody has them that they can just view.
Yeah. I just love that idea. And actually, specifically for American Reading Company, a strength of that when you look through those materials is the parent-family engagement component. When you look across programs and materials, not all of them have that. And so they have that 100 book challenge. That's specifically the parent and family engagement piece. And they also have an online toolkit, and I wonder, we could even look in there and see and talk to the company about videos that are like that. All of their books that are at the kids' different levels, at the back of the book, they have a kind of like a protocol. What do you do when you get to a word you don't know? And it's some of the classic stuff that all of us that have taught early reading know, but like just showing that to parents and getting them on board. So we'll look into that for sure. I think that's a wonderful suggestion. Thank you.
And
Let me just add this real quick before you go jump in there. When it comes to like reading at home, I think one of the most important pieces is just allowing our parents to read with their kids,
Yes.
no matter what necessarily level that they may come with, or whether it's from historically marginalized groups to the gifted and talented. That is the reason why they send them to school, to help with the reading efficacy of our students. And so I just want to make sure I noted that. A lot of times we want our parents to have more in their caveat or in their cachet of things to learn. But people go to school for years to learn how to teach reading, right? And so we don't want to just drop things in a bucket to say this is the strategy or this is the golden egg or goose. More so than it is, we want you to read with your kids. And so those challenges that we have in place and the level readers that we have in place, no matter where those kids are or our kids are, we should just be encouraging that reading. And so that's kitty corner to what Mrs. Mortek has mentioned, as well as Mrs. Basso.
Yeah, another thought would be is actually to record the individual students reading the books that they have chosen, and making that as a database that's available for preschool, or those students younger, as an option to look at or to listen to a book. And so there's some options you can do there. I mean, the art department can do, graphics to go with it, or whatever, so to do some illustrations. So there's a lot of things that we can do that would encourage students to really work on their reading. I think if a student is able to record the book that they have, and they can then take that and send that to their grandparent or to other relatives or people that can't be here all the time as a way to do it, that amount of encouragement can also then encourage them to continue working hard to read better and better.
That's really also springing off of like a leap pad of what we did during virtual COVID times, right? So all these things came out of that, and a lot of, recording students reading to share with others or to assess where they were at really came out organically out of COVID times. And so I'm sure that that's pretty easy to continue because those mechanisms already exist. Yeah.
Just to note, copyright doesn't allow for recording. Districts can get in a little trouble for that part right there as well. So we can naturally, students can record themselves reading, but we kind of get in the gray area when it comes in a different format.
Thank you so much for those thoughts and comments and questions. I know we're closing in a little bit on time, and I apologize for a 4-minute delay in starting, but I just wanted to offer some feedback. Generally, on the presentation was excellent. Like, it really checked all the boxes, and I appreciate, Ms. Mortek, how you pointed out there's no silver bullet curriculum, and I mean, really, study after study, like in Wisconsin, shows that building teacher, right, and we know from Hattie, right, like teacher self-efficacy and capacity is the way to boost all of our students' learning, right? So I think from what I've seen today, it sounds like we're right on the right track. And I'll just share anecdotally, I have a struggling reader who's currently in ARC, and I learned about the colors because prior to this year, it was pulling teeth, no matter how much pizza I bought. But this year, I'm seeing a lot of intrinsic motivation. And she was telling me Mom, I want to be a green. I've been stuck in yellow, and I had no idea what she was talking about. But I was yes, let's read more. So we we've been reading every, and it's not a chore now. And I mean, it's absolutely, I know I was excited to see all the little charts, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's my kids doing that. And so it just, and I also want to compliment just when you talk about the instructional coaches and the impact on our teachers, at parent-teacher conferences, because, I want to be able to support at home, what they're doing at school, but it's hard to keep up with everything. I'd asked her teacher, what exactly are, and I didn't even necessarily seriously mean it, but I'm it sure would be nice to know kind of what the prioritized standards are, right? So we can really focus, the minimal time we have at home with after school stuff to really focus on the heavy hitting stuff. And they're yeah, sure, no problem. And sent me home this whole thick packet of yep, here's our prioritized standards. It's all laid out for the year. And then I can give her that feedback wow, look how well you did this. And this is right what you're supposed to, your teacher told me this is right what you're supposed to be doing right now. Cause nobody can stay on top of that communication. I'm sure it would exhaust teachers to talk to parents that much. So I just thought that was phenomenal. There's such great evidence of, so in addition to buying everybody pizza, just to see that intrinsic motivation is huge. And I know that's just one kid, but anytime, I've heard nothing but good things. So thank you so much for taking all the time that you have and taking this multifaceted approach to really strengthen our curriculum.
I just want to say thank you because that is actually it's important feedback because when you're working through the system, to know that we identified priority standards, right? We've developed a curriculum warehouse, we've adopted a program, and when you asked as a parent, what are those things, that teacher was able to access those things and then send them to you, and that is exactly what we want, right? And so I'm grateful to whomever your daughter's teacher is or your child's teacher is, because that's the work that we want to be able to do for all kids. And so thank you for that.
Oh, no, for sure. And I mean, this is a child who's like neurodiverse, and it's like this, and I mean, that's really, that intrinsic motivation piece is just phenomenal. So yeah, overall, I'm really happy with what you were able to share, and I mean, I really appreciate it, and I'm excited to see. So, and I just want to clarify those scores, because when I do my report out, I'll mention it. So it looks like this time last year, our proficiency number, and it's like 0.9. So can I round up? Is that honest? To say 23 points? So can I say like last year we were at 24%? And this time this year, we're at 34%, which is just a shade below our end of the year goal, right? And I understand that rigor we have to stay on that.
Right.
But that's, very commendable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me just say this, and this could be the last words. I think we have the responsibility to continuously report this information, no matter what direction. Well, we want to continue the direction in the right way. However, we do know that as it pertains to year-to-year conversations, this first big jump is normally followed by like small leaps after that, and then you'll see another big jump. And so from a data perspective, just understand it all kind of comes, in small leaps. And so this is a long run, especially when we're trying to talk about achievement over time, especially in reading. But we do believe with high teacher conversations and professional learning that these conversations can continue and our students can continuously grow over time. And so that's just the literacy snapshot for today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again, everybody. That's my favorite thing to talk about and hear about. So glad we got to do that this meeting. All right, and I just want to point out too, which was really cool, if folks who are following along at home, when you click now on the agenda items, you'll notice that this kind of checked off like culture and leadership, equity and whole child. And so anybody who's got like their strategic plan scorecard playing along can knock those 3 off. Okay, cool, which I really appreciate. Thanks for posting it that way. All right, great. So our next meeting is going to be on Tuesday, February 21st, most likely at 5:30 p.m. And is there anything else before we adjourn? Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for your participation. Motion to adjourn.
So move.
All right. Moved by Winfield, second by Schneider. All in favor of adjourning at 6:17 p.m., please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
By Board Member Winfield and seconded by Board Member Spencer Anderson. Is there any discussion?
Yes, I have an adjustment. So the minutes say that the amendment was made to increase the addendum by $282. That actually wasn't the amendment. The amendment was not to increase the addendum, but it was to replace the recommended $1,380 from the November 1st, 2022 employee recommendations and replace it with the correct amount of $232. Ms. Shope, do you need me to repeat any of that? Okay, so again, it should be replaced with $232. Thank you.
Okay. So the minutes have been amended. Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Item 2A, Fall 2022 Climate Survey Results.
So over the fall, of course, there was a survey that was given, and we have our presenter here that's going to give us a quick presentation for the survey results. Again, I would like to thank the organization that has helped us with this. And again, here we are today to discuss it. Per the board's conversation, you wanted to bring this back to the board for discussion.
Thank you so much. Okay, there we go. All right. Thank you so much. We appreciate being back presenting the climate survey results. And the climate survey was completed in the fall semester. And this is survey results that we're doing fall and spring semester, or semester over semester, so we can see what those key trends are. And really what we're looking for in the survey is what is the engagement, which is the emotional commitment to the district and its goals. And why we care about that is because it is looking at what is the productivity, the innovation, the impact of the current staff that we have, and what is their ability, what is their likelihood that they will be leaving the organization. So if we want to go to the climate survey response rate slide. Perfect, yep. So one of the things that we look at within the surveys is what percentage of staff are responding to the survey. And what we have is in this survey, so the fall 2022 survey, we had a 52% response rate. This is higher than the spring 2022 survey, which had a 48% response rate. I will say that there was a lot of work on the administrative part to get those numbers up. We extended the survey by a week to get that up. And a note to that as well is the benchmark for valid results is 65%. So I want to name what that is because we're not hitting that number with the responses to the survey. What we're hearing, so when I'm talking to staff in an exit interview, is that they don't feel like things are being done with the climate survey data. So I just want to name that with that number because I know that's a question that has come up in previous surveys. So even though we're not at that 65% number, we really have a strong indication of what the sentiments of staff are. So if we go to the next slide. What we're seeing here is we're seeing what are the results of the climate survey based on 4 key areas, and those areas together make up the engagement, meaning how engaged are our staff inside of our organization. And what this is showing is essentially 52% of staff are engaged and 48% of staff are not engaged in the day-to-day work of the organization. And when we break that down, what that looks like is there's 4 key drivers that come into that. One is, am I in the right job? And, fit to roll with my specific job. 62% of the staff are saying, yes, we are. The next one is looking at the manager. 69% of staff are saying, yep, I'm aligned with my manager. My manager is leading me the way I need to be led to be effective in the organization. 75% of staff are stating, you know what, I work with a great team. My team really helps support me to be successful. And then the one that I think is needed to focus on is only 34% of staff feel that they are working in an organizational culture that supports them to be successful in their day-to-day work. And that really is the area where we see some key concerns. So when we look at that, let's go ahead and look at the strengths. Thank you so much. Go ahead and look at the strengths and the opportunities. So these are the strengths and the opportunities for this climate survey. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare this to the previous survey and walk through it, each of those within that. So if we want to go to, it's 2 more down. We'll skip, 1 more. Perfect. So these are the strengths that we see. So what we did here is we compared the spring climate survey to the fall climate survey. So you're seeing what last spring survey was to what we're seeing now. And one thing that is staying consistent is I'm excited about the work that I do every day, which we like to see that, right? We want educators to be excited about the work they do every day along with support and administration. We see the benchmark data, so we do look at data across the country to say, hey, how is this comparing to what we're seeing in organizations? So that's our benchmark. The next one is my manager helped to create opportunities for my growth and development. What we're seeing here is that stayed about the same. In my day-to-day work, I'm gaining valuable skills and experiences that will help me in my future. When we look at this one, this dropped by about 17%. And so that is something that we see concerning. It's something that we also kind of saw in the comments as to, okay, so what's changing in my day-to-day experience that has it not feeling like this is gonna help me in my future career? And then the next two were the strengths in the last survey that now are no longer the key strengths. And the one that really showed out as concerning to me here is when conflict arises, the people I work with resolve it respectfully and quickly. That dropped by 20%. And so when we look at that, it's looking at this and saying, what's happening with our teams and our leadership that individuals don't feel like they can quickly resolve conflict as it comes forward. So if we go to the next slide, we will look at the opportunities. So these we're looking at what were the lowest rated areas that impact the engagement in the organization. And so what we see here is we see I trust senior leadership in my organization. This has shown up on, the last one as well. And that actually fell. That went from 39% to 25%. So we're seeing a decrease in staff that feel like they can trust senior leadership in the organization. And when asked who senior leadership is, because I believe that this distinction is really important, that is looking at essentially the administrative or CAC essentially is what that is looking at. I believe the culture of the organization drives high performance. This stayed about consistent, 37, 38%. The benchmark for that is 71%. So again, when we talked earlier about the culture of the organization, this is where some of those key items are driving. And so that feeling that the culture that we're in doesn't allow me to have high performance because of whatever those structures are. The next one that showed up as an area of opportunity also fell from the last survey result, and that was there's great open, honest, and two-way communication in the organization. So we're seeing a lack of transparency, and we also saw that come out specifically within some of those comments that staff did share. And then the next is I see growth opportunities for myself in this organization. We saw that increase, over the last survey. So we went from 36% to 60%. So we're definitely now seeing that there's career growth opportunities, and that is aligned with what the benchmark is. What this next slide will show, if you want to go to the next one, is looking at then where individuals feel that they can kind of grow within the organization and what that looks like. And so with that, we see my organization has an outstanding future again. And I believe we're hiring people with the right talents to help us achieve our business strategies. So we're seeing these shift. That went from 62% in the spring to 27% in the fall survey. And when we looked at the comments as to what was coming in on are we hiring the right individuals, it was looking at CEC administration, then it was also looking at staff coming in without licenses, et cetera. So, and that's the sentiments that staff are sharing. So with that, I have the take action items. So there's 3 items here. I will name that these didn't necessarily change from the last report that we had. And, so those take actions is every survey that we do has very specific actions within it, and you'll see that in the packet that was provided as well. But there's specific items that show, hey, how can we move this forward? So impact on culture while instilling and showing staff organization is making changes necessary to be competitive in the future. What our numbers are showing us is that staff don't feel that that is happening within some of the decisions that the board and executive leadership is making. The second is clear direction, communication, definition, and support on where the district's going, specifically transparency, and what is being shared, is that aligned with what the staff's sentiments are? Is there a disconnect between the two? And then the third is processes and procedures that support staff in serving students. And we've definitely heard that one in a number of different areas over the last couple of years, whether it is with support in removing students from a classroom that are disruptive, or whether it is in support with subs and how that's happening versus teachers being pulled in and asked to sub during prep periods, et cetera. So with that, that's a recap of our presentation of the climate survey results, the comparison, and then the taking action. And Dr. Garrison, I hit it in 10 minutes.
I was watching the clock. No, thank you so much for the presentation. Board, this is a report that you all asked for, and I wanted to make sure we honor that conversation, and so we will open it up for discussions.
Just a couple questions. One, you mentioned staff exit surveys. So I have to admit, I haven't seen any of those, so I'm not sure where those are housed, or how, who accesses those, acts on them. I guess I'd be interested to, whether it's seeing, not that I need to see everyone, but I guess a compilation of those thoughts as well, because we look at why do our students leave the district? I think we got to look at why are teachers leaving the district. I would bet there's some similarities there and some common themes.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have, and this is something I can provide if you're interested in it, I do have where we have tracked the exit survey data along with the climate survey data so we can see what the trends are year over year. So the exit surveys are, those are sent out as soon as individuals leave. So it is a paper survey, then we have a phone conversation, and those are compiled and then shared on an annual basis. So we shared that in September. But I think what we're not seeing here is the trending of that to the climate surveys and to what those key items are. So those have come out, I think, every year for the last 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
So, so with that, that's kind of where those are as well. So I don't know if we can pull those back out of. Okay.
Okay. I'll work on getting them from wherever they're housed at then. The second thing is, with any of these, I've worked for organizations that have done these year after year after year, and I think the only way some of these things change, at least change in a positive direction, is we have to understand what steps are being taken in between these surveys, right? So surveys results can go up, down. We can see trends. They can be better by accident. They can be worse because you're not doing the action items. So it's hard to tell. So I guess this is more of a question for Dr. Garrison. And like I said, he wasn't here for the first survey. He wasn't here really when the second survey was done, right? So it's one of those, something to dig in at some point and say, hey, of these action items that were identified in the spring, and now we've got a new set of action items, which really are kind of the same ones. They really haven't changed. How are we following up on that to make sure that we're addressing them, and taking the actions that are included so that when we have, Tracy does a new survey next fall, that shows, the progress that we're looking for.
I think one of the things that we're trying to do right now under my administration is to really just be transparent in our communication. Since I've arrived, I did look at this survey. I looked at the action items, and one of the things that, of course, you saw in the report is that there was some distrust from CAIC administrators, and I call myself a CAIC administrator as well. And so, as a superintendent, I believe that it is my responsibility to lead how we will communicate moving forward, and that's what I've been doing. In my superintendent's report, in the next conversation, I will lay out to everyone all of the conversations, again, that I've been having inside of the district. And so naturally, you have heard about conversations I've had outside of the district, but I've also been having a lot of conversations inside of the districts on various different topics to gain that momentum around trust and culture from leadership. Naturally, I also have been very clear with my administrative staff on our monthly meetings based off of what I say here, and then it's the same conversations that they need to have when they go out. And so there's not a miscommunication around communications, especially when we're honing in on exactly how communication should happen. Trying to, again, fix the whole conversations around, that culture piece. Clear communication is, again, something that I pride myself on. I don't always, my words sometimes slur, but if you listen to the first and the last thing I say, it's pretty clear. And so one of my things is that we have to continue to make sure that people are, we can deliver a lot of information, but how they receive it is up to them, right? And so as long as I'm delivering the information that is, timely, clear, concise, then that's the expectation that I have to bring to the table, and that the expectation then is followed throughout the rest of the administration. Processes and procedures that support staff and serving students. I think there are some things that we got to correct, and I haven't wrapped my brain around all of what that statement could actually mean from an action step. Naturally, we've been having conversations around student achievement in our district prior to me, well, I should say well before me, and we haven't made the gains that we really want to see across the board. Now, with that being stated, there's a lot of things that we have to put in place in order for that to happen. Day 39, I'm not counting, but we are here to, and I could be wrong about that day, I just kind of threw it out there, but we are putting some things in place to address some of that achievement conversations, and even then today, in the literacy conversation, I did bring forth the possibilities that we are making certain gains, that we need to report out our story so that everyone can hear it. So that's just some of the snapshots that I've been working on, but there's a lot more work to be done.
Other board members, any questions?
Thank you for the presentation and doing the executive summary, very helpful. I'm looking at the longer report on page 7, and I like that it allows the employee to reflect on the people I work with accepts accountability, they try to understand one another, they communicate effectively, work to resolve, so all of those things. Is there a place in the exit survey process where an individual is able to be reflective concerning themselves? Because if you are not in the best situation, sometimes you play a role in that, and it would be helpful to understand, like, yep, this didn't work out. These are the issues that I identified that were external. And if I'm being completely honest, these are the things I either could have done or did and probably shouldn't have done that could have helped to make this better. Is there any place, whether it's formally written down or if it's through the conversation, where staff that are exiting have an opportunity to share information like that?
So from the exit, yes, there's a number of different places within the exit surveys and in the conversations. So we definitely, when we do those exit phone conversations, we definitely dig into those items as to what is it, one of the questions I ask is, hey, if you could go back and change anything, what would you change? And would that have changed you staying or leaving? So those questions are absolutely asked there. To tie this back to the engagement survey for a minute, one of the things that is available is that there is take action on engagement where we actually have the conversations with the leader for the area. And that's where the leader is saying, okay, here's my report for my staff, and it's essentially a facilitated conversation that says, how do we change this? Because it's not just on the leader, right? It's also on the staff member to say, here's where my hand is in it, and here's how we can collaborate together to do that. And what we find in those conversations, so much of it is a slow start based on a lack of trust. So there's a lot of trust building that starts first.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other board members? All right, then I'll ask my question. Can we go back to the in the slide? All right. Yeah, so one, I want to say thank you for the presentation. I think that sometimes people might not understand what the purpose of this is. And like I said, sometimes there's information that comes back, but like I said, the exit surveys you present at the end of the complete hiring cycle and people coming and going. So that happened in September. And then we have this fall and this spring survey. I think one of the things that as a board that we are wanting to address, like I said, is to provide the educational experiences and outcomes for our students that lead them to where they need to be academically. And then also we made a focus on providing a great working environment for our staff. I think that one of the things, so when I look at the information that is presented, what I look at as a board member, what are the actions that we can take that will impact some of these things? when I think of like our longest serving board member to date here would be Megan. And she served a full 3-year term and reelected. That some of these issues, because I'm a former employee of the School District of Beloit, and some of these issues existed before any of these people on this board ever got here. So I understand that also. But as I go back and I'm looking, and like I said, you can feel that disconnect between maybe what has been done and then where the employees feel it, and you'll be looking to see that in the information. And it's not that I'm trying to explain, but I just want to go back over this. So in the take action part, where it says impact the culture, with instilling and showing staff that the organization, thank you for bringing it bigger, is making changes necessary to be competitive in the future. And so that's board leadership and superintendent stability. Just kind of as an example, Spencer here has been elected and then reelected. Megan served the 3 years and then was reelected. Greg was appointed, served that time, and then was reelected. Board member Winfield he was elected to the 1-year term, served his 1-year term, has decided not to serve again. Board member Levy is finishing her 3-year term. I'm in my 2nd year of 3-year terms. And so I take the time to say that our most recent history of school board members is that people have not finished their 3-year terms. So even though it might not be reflected, it's kind of like football. If you're a losing team, just because you make the playoffs 1 year, people don't consider you to be a winning team, all right? But those are the things that it might not show up. But to me, part of that board leadership is that we're establishing stability as a board. Now, after you get to that part, there's other things that we've done to address compensation.
So can I?
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm going to give, again, so much of it is reading between the lines and looking really deeply into what the staff comments are, what the conversations are through the exit. So when we put board leadership on here, it was really looking at things like, is the strategic plan aligned with what staff are saying are the concerns, right? And so when we look at those two things side by side, what staff are saying are their biggest concerns, are those reflected in that strategic plan as what's coming up? So that's where that came from. And then superintendent, of course, has been the turnover that has specifically happened at that level, and really the changes that happen from, when a new leader comes in and how that kind of rolls through the organization as far as we're going to change these directives and, just the misunderstanding of what's starting, what's stopping, et cetera.
Right. And so I want to go back to this board leadership part, because a part of this is politics too. These are elected offices and how people respond. So there's opportunity to say things, but again, for this board, our most recent actions of compensation, and like you said, alignment to strategic plan, we didn't have a strategic plan. So we just approved a strategic plan. Superintendent hire, whether people wanted us to hire a superintendent or not, we hired a superintendent to address the facts that we've had superintendent turnover. And then even as we address the next issue that we're dealing with tonight is referendum planning and finance. Just some of the things that have been there. Like I said, on the superintendent leadership side, Dr. Kieser in his interim year and superintendent year, Teresa serving us through summer, Dr. Anderson serving us through the interim period, and then Dr. Garrison, and to provide stability because he has been meeting our expectations, extended the year that the contract provides. And so, like I said, again, I know it's not that, hey, when we say, well, these are all the things we're doing to improve the organization, that they might not show up. But then also, too, I think the other parts, as we continue to work the different parts of the strategic plan, those would be the things that I would look, that now that as Dr. Garrison is here, like that last part about clear direction, communication, definition, and support with where the district is going. The strategic plan is where the district is going. For people to understand that, and for the administration and administrators that serve under him to begin to articulate those points as we're in these meetings and feedback is coming, That is what people should understand, and that's the direction the district is going. And then lastly, the processes and procedures that support the staff in serving the students, that is kind of, I'm seeing that on the day-to-day process of what, coming from the superintendent to the other administrators that are in the building with the teachers, that's where that lived experience is. So again, the reason we continue to ask for this to be done and have partnered is because we do want to hear what people are saying so we can address it and then have some, a chance for adjustment to see if things are happening. So I do thank you for the information, but those are important parts. I just wanted to articulate kind of in those spaces. So when I see those things, I know that some of those things have been covered, and that the address is there. How long, like I said, has it caught in the organization yet, where the organization registers that as this was a problem and it's being fixed? Those are things that we'll continue to look for. Yeah. Any other questions, board members? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So again, so as we look at those results, I just want to make a summary and wrap-up statement that because we've asked for that result to be, for the surveys to be done, now that Dr. Garrison is here, he has that information to take with him, as he said, as he continues to work and help us at the board level and the day-to-day operations level to, we want to have different results. We want to make sure that we've got a thriving organization, and we know we'll work towards that. All right, we are now at employment recommendations. A motion may be made to convene the Human Resource Committee into closed session pursuant to section 19.85, parentheses 1, parentheses C, of the Wisconsin State Statutes relative to considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. Is there a motion? I need this. Is there a motion? So I'm going to make the motion then, because there is an item I have for closed session. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Motion by Board Member Sean Levy, second by Megan Miller. Any discussion? Mr. Shope, can you give us a roll call, please?
Yes. Amy Levy?
Aye.
Megan Miller?
Aye.
Joanne Winfield?
Aye.
Brian Anderson?
Aye.
Sean Levy?
Aye.
Greg Schneider?
Aye.
Spencer Anderson?
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
We'll be in closed session. All right, are we all ready? Where's back? Okay, the Human Resource Committee is reconvening in public session in order to take any action if necessary on items discussed in closed session. Are there other questions for items in open or actions to be taken?
I have a quick question on Exhibit A. Is there another teacher ready to step in for the 7th grade ELA at Fruzen? Do we have that covered?
I apologize, but I do not have an answer for that currently.
Okay. And then my other question is, I see that we have a special ed para that's transferring from Even Start to Robinson, and I know that over the past several years, we've had issues with being fully staffed at Even Start. Is this a surplus that's going to Robinson? Does this kind of leave Even Start at a deficiency?
It's not a surplus. However, what I can do in researching your previous question and providing you with an answer, I can let you know the status of the backfilling of the Even Start role that's being vacated.
Okay.
And in the future, if that's something that you want to make sure we have, I'll be more than happy to have that information available during the board meeting.
Thank you.
Of course.
And then my other question is on Exhibit B, so if there are any other questions on Exhibit A, I can yield the floor.
Any other questions on Exhibit A? Okay, Exhibit B.
Okay. Exhibit B, thank you for putting those calculations where the public can access them, so that is much appreciated. I just had a quick question. So it looks, well, just one thing that kind of confused me, and if it confused me, it may have confused others, is that in the equation, it has the last name dash, but when I initially looked at it, it seemed like something should have been subtracted from, and then it got odd because it was the last name, which I was like, well, maybe that individual's salary should go there, and then you do the calculations. So just a note that the way it was laid out was a bit confusing, but I was able to figure it out, that it had nothing to do with the last name, and that was a dash and not a minus, and had nothing to do with the equation. So I just wanted to highlight that. But then it got me thinking is that the amount for the mentorship is $750. And so when it was prorated, I thought it was based on the date. But as I looked closer at the equation you put in, there's 8 different people, but there's lots of different categories of contract days. And so that would make sense for me if you were talking about the difference between like teachers or administrators or secretaries. But it seems like there's a lot of people in the same employment group, but they have a different number of allotted contracted days to be a mentor. So I'm just wondering why that difference is there.
That ties in with the Exhibit B, the effective date of their mentorship to begin. And so you'll see you have one that started in November of 2022, but then you have some that are not starting until 1/25 of 2023. So that's the difference of contract days that they will actually be fulfilling that mentorship role. And that could be for any number of reasons when the mentorship begins.
Okay. And then my other question is, we had been told previously that we have an unlimited number of mentors. So for example, anyone in the district that needs a mentor, we'll find you one, and that will be requested that the board approves it. But my question is there a cap on the number of mentees a mentor can have? Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. And I don't know if I have not seen anything to the effect of a cap Missy, can you speak more to that?
And the only reason I thought to ask that is that we have one person down twice. And I was thinking, oh, well, how many mentees can you have? So just,
I have not seen a cap on any. Missy?
I can just speak to a personal situation I was in. I oversee departments that have very few people in them. I'll use social workers, for example, and you'll see we have a lot of new social workers. So we have somebody with multiple mentees, and the staff member in charge of assigning has always just called me and had a personal conversation to discuss the capacity that the individual can handle.
sounds
I
good.
don't know if that-
Thank you so much.
That's it. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, board members? All right, is there a motion?
Yes, I move that we approve exhibits A and B without the facilities MEP manager position on exhibit A.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Board Member Miller and seconded by Board Member Schneider. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, motion passes unanimously. On to 4A, our next meeting date, Tuesday, February 7th, 2023 at 6:30 PM. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
It's moved by Board Member Miller, seconded by Board Member Spencer Anderson. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes unanimously. All right. And we are adjourned, and we'll start the business meeting in about 3 minutes. All right, get ready, people. We're getting ready to start it. All right. Going to call to order the January 17th, 2023 regular board meeting at 7:35 p.m. Mrs. Shope, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Joanne Winfield,
Gotcha.
Present.
Greg Schneider,
Present.
Megan Miller,
Present?
Sean Levy,
Present.
Amy Levy,
Here.
Spencer Anderson,
Here.
and Brian Anderson.
Here.
All members are present.
I'd also like to make this public announcement before we have our roll call, that the Board of Education would like to let our families and viewers know that our regular board meetings are being simultaneously interpreted. You can watch the Spanish interpreted meeting through the link found at the board website under the Watch Meetings tab with tonight's date. In order to accommodate this interpretation, we will be monitoring the pace of our meeting to allow time for the interpretation, and I'd like to remind our board members and others speaking to please speak one at a time. Thank you so much for your consideration and understanding. All right, Mrs. Shope, could I have a roll call? We had the roll call? All right, thank you. Is there a motion for the approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Board Member Amy Levy and seconded by Board Member Joanne Winfield. Is there any discussion?
Yes. Board President Levy, would it be possible to move our, I'm just trying to be considerate of people's time, item 7 for the BMHS Academy update? Could we move that after committee and other board reports? I'm just looking at the other items and, like, I don't want to put anybody off, but
Yeah, we can do that.
is that okay with our presenters? Okay.
Okay. So Board Member Miller has suggested that we move item 7 to after 4. All right. Any other discussion? All right. So, is there a motion? So we have had the motion. We'll accept that amendment there. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Board Member Anderson, Brian Anderson, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. All right. We'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Yes. All right. Yeah, I'm getting ready to read it here. Mrs. Shope, do we have public comment this evening?
We do have a few people with us tonight that would like to make public comment.
All right, so a few people in the audience. Any email?
Yes.
Is there any email?
There are no emails, no.
Okay.
You ready for their first person?
I have to read our
Oh, yes.
norms first.
Yes.
All right. Norms for public comments during board meetings. Members of the public are welcome to attend all open meetings of the Board of Education. Robert's Rules of Orders will be followed at all times. Individuals attending board meetings are expected to conduct themselves in a respectful and courteous manner that models appropriate behavior for our students. Individuals wishing to comment are expected to comply with the following norms in order to maintain a respectful and ordered meeting and to prevent discussion of confidential matters in a public forum. Comments should be directed to members of the Board of Education and not district employees, students, or other members of the public in attendance at the meeting. speech that is belligerent, disorderly, disruptive, repetitive, or which exceeds the allowable time permitted for each speaker is prohibited. Concerns or questions that entail the disclosure of identifying information regarding specific students are prohibited. Response from the board, if any, will be limited to clarifying inaccurate information, seeking additional information from the speaker, or acknowledging that the speaker has been understood. The board will not debate with an individual, and the board may not take action on an item raised during public comment that is not on the meeting notice agenda. The chair will interrupt and rule an individual who violates any of these norms out of order. If ruled out of order by the chair, the individual's opportunity to address the board will end immediately and the microphone will be turned off. Thank you for your participation and courtesy. And you can call the first speaker up.
The first speaker is Devin McIntyre. And I think he had to leave.
All right.
I'm going to time it on my, I just totally screwed up the timer thing, so I'll just do a timer here.
Okay. Our next speaker is Teresa Johnson.
20 hours, 42 minutes. Go ahead. 3 minutes.
I'll do a timer.
You got it.
Sorry. Thanks, Doc.
You all are crazy. Whenever you're ready. They figured this the time thing out.
I'll wave at you if you're close. Excuse me? I was just saying, I messed up the speaker timer thing. I hit the wrong button. So I have a 3-minute timer, and I'll just give you a wave if you're getting close to time. But
Okay, well, and Isaac's going to yield his time to me too. So-
perfect. I'll set.
But I know, he knows he needs to come up here and follow protocol.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
At last month's meeting, I shared with you how I was offered and accepted a science teaching position last August, but had to resign due to the noxious air in the classroom, highlighting the sad irony that the school's gymnasium had had high-tech large screens and projectors installed last summer. During the interview for the position, and knowing the subject material was primarily earth and climate science, I asked if the classroom had a periodic table. No. World globes? No. It hadn't occurred to me to ask if there had been any complaints about the air quality in the classroom. That Friday, before classes began, I met with my fellow team members. I was informed we would all be required to teach a section of music class. Laughably tone deaf, I agreed without hesitation, figuring I could at least teach about the physics of sound and the materials of different instruments. Nonetheless, it was a challenge all 4 of us accepted willingly, because that's what the teachers of Beloit schools do. They prioritize the needs of the students. They care about the students as people, students today, adults tomorrow, fellow community members 10, 20 years from now. Recently, I ran into one of the team teachers. I explained my sudden resignation due to my negative physiological reaction to the putrid classroom air, and my interaction with the administrator. The teacher's response was, "Oh yeah, that classroom's been like that for years." Let that sink in. 4 years. This district had a $70 million referendum, took $5-6 million out of operations to build this building, but failed for years to fix the HVAC in that classroom. It is shameful and embarrassing. The district has not had the courage to do what is right by its students, its teachers, and its taxpayers. That is, prioritize authentic needs over fanciful wants. I see nothing in the first phase of the referendum to cover HVAC at middle schools. And please recall, the middle schools were neglected in the 2012 referendum. The second phase of your proposed referendum, occurring in November 2024, has no specific indications that these needed improvements will be addressed. In the meantime, how many educators are you willing to lose? Between the 2012 referendum dollars, the money taken out of operations to pay for this new administration building, and the extra COVID funds, it makes me wonder, where has all this money gone? Really? I will, however, vote in favor of both Phase 1 and Phase 2 only when there is a clause that prevents any district of referendum money going for any non-academic purpose until every classroom has adequate HVAC systems. The level of respect, consideration, and value a district and a community puts on its classroom teachers is a direct reflection of how much they actually value their students. Do better, Beloit. Isaac.
Isaac Johnson, 1621 Indian Road. I yield my time.
Having served as a board member during the district's 2012 referendum and being a strong advocate for education, I kindly suggest you do not have a two-phase referendum, especially after the enormous referendum of 2012, which began at $20 million and quickly escalated to over $70 million. The citizens of Beloit will not be as charitable, especially with the decline in school ratings, academic test scores, and enrollment. Have one referendum, get it right the first time, put money into essential classroom needs, breathable air, para-educators, and time for teachers to do their jobs unencumbered from excessive and meaningless meetings. Begin with adequately staffing your human resource department so they can help figure out how to recruit and retain quality educators. Hire educators with backgrounds in the subject matter they are teaching. Mind you, had I not resigned, it's been 30 years since my last music class. The district has a glut of administrators and a deficit of classroom educators. As a taxpayer, I'm wondering why the district needs so many administrative teacher coaches to coach teachers. In other words, why does the district have so many teachers in need of coaching to justify funding so many teacher coaches? Shouldn't teachers you approve already be prepared to teach the subject matter? The most effective use of district funds at this time is improving classroom atmosphere, both literally and figuratively, and improving academics. This will only be achieved when you give the teachers the respect, consideration, and value they deserve. Again, do better, Beloit.
Thank you. Are there other public comments?
Yes, I have one more. Brittany Keys.
Excuse me. Good evening, school board members and Dr. Garrison. My name is Brittany Keys. I'm a resident in Beloit, 1611 East Ridge Road. And thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I'm here to speak towards student safety, specifically with commuting to school and getting to and from school activities. So whether that's walking, biking, or driving safely. So the three things that I'm going to share are a near miss, an update and an invitation, as well as an ask. So my daughter goes to Todd Elementary, and I am occasionally one of the parents going into the pickup line, and I'm also a Prius driver. And I drive like a Prius driver, which I'm very thankful for, because it was an early out, and I was going about 15 miles an hour, and the queue was very long because there's no after school time. And as I was looking where I was going to turn around, pausing, looking to turn in Emerson, all of a sudden there's a little kid sprinting out in front of me, and I slam on the brakes. And thank goodness, I really think that there was a larger distance in between me, but it's just a reality check. This little one was probably looking to his left. There was a queue of big vehicles to his right. He looked, the road was clear to his left, and he couldn't see to his right, or what he could see, it was clear, and he went. Right after that, I was very shooken up. My dog was too. He flew to the floorboards. He's okay. I called the city engineer and shared with the city, I was like, we have to do better by these kids. I don't know that little one, but I know he was scared. And these kids are, all these kids need to be supported by everyone in the community, and I feel like even that kind of fell short. So I started problem solving, brainstorming on what we could do. So that comes to the update. 1 minute left. The update is I have been communicating quite a bit with city staff on how we can improve commuting, walking, biking, and around and slowing traffic around the schools. And I've written to the traffic review committee, written to the state line area transportation. I've met with city staff and other community members. I'm encouraging them to adapt Vision Zero and also look into a crosswalk on Milwaukee Road, potentially one that has a flashing sign that the little kid could have pushed the button, and then as a driver we could have all seen and stopped. And even though I visually couldn't see him on the sidewalk, we could have prevented that because we all want to make sure we are being proactive and investing in protecting our students. My final ask is regarding a little bit older with improving access to and educating and optimizing safety for our driving students, and looking at bringing driver's ed back into the district, and looking at how we can remove barriers to access that education so they can be safe with getting on the road and decrease, like I said, barriers to school, sporting events, and even work. So if possible, I don't know where you are in the timeline, but if that'd be an operational cost, if somehow we could reflect on how that could be worked into the operational referendum and bringing that back in, that would be huge for our students. And so I do want to say I greatly appreciate all the staff within the district that I work with and that work with my time. Oh. Okay.
Deb Prouse, 2056 Cobblestone Court. I yield my time.
Thank you, Deb. I thought you were just nodding at me, President Levy. I was like, thanks, yeah. And even though my timer says 4 minutes. I do greatly appreciate staff, administration, and leadership, and the willingness to consider how to improve safety and resources for our students. Regarding Vision Zero, I want to expand on that just a little bit. That's a program other communities have adapted, and this would be asking you to potentially support and collaborate with discussion with the city. It's having 0 deaths related to vehicles, whether pedestrian vehicle, bicycle vehicle, or vehicle. So I feel like there's a lot of opportunity for leaders of our city to collaborate on problem solving and how to make our roads safer for our students, whether they're walking, biking, or driving. And so I will email that resource to the board, and I greatly thank you again for the time and for the support and for your leadership and serving the community.
Thank you. Do we have other public comment? Okay. Our student board representative is not here today, so we don't have a report. So we are now at 3B, Director of Facilities Board Report.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. I will move fairly quickly through this update. Please stop me at any time if you have any questions. I know we have a pretty full agenda tonight. I don't know if you're going to share the presentation, Michelle. I'll let you get that queued up. No problem, great. All right, so I'll just get started. First of all, my name is Luke Butz, the Director of Facilities. I've been with the district for about 4 months now. It seems like a great 4 years so far, but 4 months, excuse me. So the first thing that I have is an update on our facility study and master planning, excuse me. What's that?
Start with laughter, that's good.
That's good, yes. Loosen up the room a little bit, of course. So we are currently working with Cadence Consulting right now to put out an RFP for architecture firms to start the facilities process again. And we are currently planning for interviews to take place in February of 2023. Final deliverables are tentatively scheduled for September of 2023 in preparation for a possible 2024 referendum. We should have more information in the coming weeks about that and our first draft of an RFP to review with the superintendent here shortly. So we've started that process already. Something we're also currently working on is our roofing asset management. We hired facilities engineering who has done work with the district for about 15 to 20 years in the past to complete a full assessment of all of our roofs. Part of that process is advising on what needs to be replaced district-wide, and then also recommending what we can do to prolong the life in a lot of areas of our roofs as well so that we can be the most cost-effective with our funds. They have already given us some budget numbers. The $1.5 million that's included in the April referendum recommendation is included in that number, and they'll also provide us with more numbers to assist with our capital plan over the next 10 years. Something we're also doing is on July 1st, we're going to be implementing a new computer maintenance management program called the Akita Box. That is going to be much more of an asset-based program and going to allow our team to be much more accountable with what we have in the future. Part of what is also included with that is a better way to track our financing. Or the finances spent by the facilities department, and also the work requested and just the overall service that we're providing the district in general. This includes the rollout of an extensive preventive maintenance program. We do have a very simple preventive maintenance program that we complete now that isn't well documented. Part of us extending all of our district assets and the life of those assets is really implementing and tracking a very extensive and thorough preventative maintenance program throughout all of our facilities and all of our assets. It's also going to assist us with prioritizing the replacement of district assets throughout the buildings as well. So I've also met with the City of Beloit Parks and Recreation Department. They have a new director. So we've met and reviewed some old documentation specifically in regards to buildings and grounds and intergovernmental agreements. For instance, Telfer Park and some other sports areas that we use now that are a part of the district's overall plan that we're considering to bring sports back to the facilities here or back on the grounds of Beloit Memorial High School. In the meantime, we're reviewing those agreements that we have, and we'll, of course, keep the superintendent and the board abreast of all of that as well. But that really circles around what type of small investments can we make in those parks as our students are using them. We want to make sure that we can provide safe athletic fields in the meantime while the district is making some longer-term plans for different areas there in regards to athletics. So lastly, we are currently reviewing and evaluating all of the bids with Nexus Solutions for all of the Beloit Memorial High School HVAC upgrades. We received bids last Tuesday, and we're going through and vetting all of those bids with the contractors this week. We should have a recommendation for award with Nexus probably by the beginning of the following week, and we'll be moving forward with that project that's already been approved by the board. There was some unfortunate delays throughout this process, just given the current supply chain issues that we have Originally, this project would have been slated to add the air conditioning and do the upgrades that would hopefully be done at the end of the summer of 2023. Unfortunately, due to some electrical equipment and some other vital equipment for that project, we are now looking at a completion towards the end of the summer of 2024. And that is assuming that we will not have any additional delays for equipment, which oftentimes comes to the forefront as we're actually getting to a ship date for a lot of these things. So we will, of course, keep everybody updated in regards to what the actual finish dates of those projects are, but unfortunately, they have been pushed back due to things that are out of our control at this time. So any questions for me in regards to any of those facilities updates?
Thank you, board members. Just one question about, so the facility study, the facilities plan that we are going to use to help determine possibilities for capital projects, that is out for bid or going out for bid, and will probably be placed in February, and then my tongue is tied here. The deliverable date for the work would be September.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct, yeah. We should be reviewing, our consultant is working on a first draft of that study that I will provide to Dr. Garrison and whoever else he would share it with probably by the end of this week. And from there, we will be distributing the actual RFP in the next week or two with things to follow then, with ultimately having that fully delivered product in September.
Right, so then being able to evaluate possible plans and needs of buildings in September.
Yeah, correct. And what I would recommend that we align that with is shortly before, or probably 4 to 6 weeks before we receive that final deliverable from the architecture firm, we would then be engaging with a construction management firm or starting to draft an RFP for a construction management firm, because typically a construction management firm would work in conjunction with our architect once that deliverable is made from them. That's where we can start developing the actual facilities master plan, putting budget numbers to those as well, because that's a function of a construction manager and not the architect, so that we can move forward with possible plans for 2024 or whatever the board and the superintendent decide is right at that time.
Okay. Any other questions, board members?
I have one. I see that we're going to implement Akita Box on July 1 of this year, but will this software package have the capability to manage your project management timelines?
No, it is, Akita Box is mostly is work order for our facility staff. So that's how we track and manage and distribute our work orders and communicate with our stakeholders, our staff. The second large piece of that is asset management that we don't currently do now. So you will actually be able to, our team will actually be able to pull up floor plans and see all of the assets located within a building and track all of the repairs that are made within those assets, tie our invoices to those, and we will tie all of our purchases directly to a work order for accountability in regards to what we're spending our facilities budget on. And then also the large piece of that is the preventative maintenance. As far as project management goes, that as typically the owner's rep in my position would be doing that would be something that I would be managing myself throughout the process with the help of a construction manager once we get to a larger referendum or something that is to that scale in the future.
Do we have software, or do you see a need to have software, or is that being tracked with like Excel spreadsheets or?
I track that. I do track a lot of that on Excel spreadsheets with my brief project involvement that I've had here in the district. A lot of it has been fact finding and pulling information from my predecessor and the different files that we have. But that's typically what I would do is on a project by project basis, we keep files of those, track costs with a project spreadsheet, and then also just your typical documentation that we use in conjunction with our architects and our engineers and whatnot.
Okay, thank you. And then what you just said actually generated another question. With the information that's being tracked in Akita Box, and I'm assuming that's, you can isolate that per building.
Yeah.
Will we be able to capture other information like building capacity?
We can, but the main function of that is actually going to be coming from the facility study that will be out for RFP. So that is a huge part of and we've done some of that already in preparation for things that are going to be talked about and decided on in regards to the reconfiguration and whatnot that'll be in place before this. But a large part of that is also included in the facility study, which includes capacity and utilization information.
Perfect. Thank you for providing that context.
And we do have, I mean, just so the board is aware, we were able to look and find some other older documents that our district have put together before on previous referenda conversations from different architects that kind of gave us a good snapshot of building capacity as the buildings stand right now. Naturally, through time, different architects use different numbers, and so we do have a range in which we could possibly work with, but that's a great question, Board Member Levy.
Anything else? Thank you.
Okay, I just had a question on the intergovernmental agreement with the city of Beloit. And I said the agreement was never executed. You have 2018, but it was dated in 1998. So it's 20 years old at that point, and we've never been executed between. Is that an agreement just for use of a school district assets or property for the city of Beloit or Park and Recreation or?
Yeah, correct. It would be any current agreement or any relationships that we have for both sides. So anything that the school district uses for the city of Beloit and any properties that the city of Beloit uses or programs that they have on our property. I mean, the extent of the information that I have is pretty much what you've just stated right now. I'm fairly new with the school district, obviously, and the new Parks and Rec director is new. He reached out to me. We're starting the conversations to improve some of that communication, improve in what we're doing, and really work together between the city and the school for the overall benefit of the entire community. So this is just the beginning.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. 3C Superintendent Board Report.
Thank you, Board Member, Board President Levy. First of all, let me just say thank you to everyone who is here tonight and, of course, have participated thus far. I would be remiss if I didn't just say, you know, of course, yesterday we celebrated Martin Luther King Day, and hopefully you all had the opportunity to partake in some of his work and through celebration and or reflection. I did some research and I tried to find a couple of his quotes that I thought could be a great starting point for today's conversation. And, you know, naturally, Dr. King have stated a lot of different themes, and a lot of his statements are very long in his oratory. But one of the statements that he put out that's very short in 4 words: Allah cannot live. Allah cannot live. And so I thought it would be very appropriate that we put that conversation into play. There's some thoughts that our district has to work through, and I believe we have put some things in place where we are addressing some of those lies that have been told about the school district of Beloit. As the superintendent and working with the board, I believe it's very important that we put out some of the truths about our school district just as much as we hear about some of the unfortunate lies. With that being stated, I truly believe that it is our hope that through time there will be more truths stated about our school district versus some of the untold lies. From a superintendent's report, I have been feverishly looking for our business services director since I landed here back in November the 14th. Over the past month, we've had few conversations with a few folk, and we have started those conversations through interviews. I do believe we are almost at the point where we can bring a recommendation to the board for consideration for our business service director. We are in the process of checking references at the current time, and we'll be bringing that conversation here in the next few weeks. We, of course, have had some reconfiguration committee conversations over the past month as well. Naturally, over December, we started the conversations, and now, of course, here in January, we are in meeting 2 of 3. We have come to a lot of consensus around some of the things that the committee has stated. Naturally, I have reached out to individual board members, just sharing some information as pertains to the reconfiguration and the committee work that we've been doing. And I look forward to bringing more information to the board in a full report here in February. We have had principal evaluation conversations. I can honestly say we have conducted all of our principal evaluation conversations at a mid-year point. That is something that the board has talked about, and making sure that we want to make sure that all of our evaluations are done, not only just with principals, but also at my level from the district administrator. We've all had conversations around EE, and so the board has had conversations about me, naturally, from EE perspective. I have also had conversations with all of our principals. And so the next phase for us is to, of course, upload certain information into the Frontline platform. We've had continuous staff meetings, of course, that address some of the referenda conversations. I have, since I've started this conversation here, we've had numerous conversations around our referenda, along with some of our reconfiguration as stated. But when we came back in here in January, I thought it was very important that I actually start going to all of the staff meetings and addressing the staff as it pertains to some of the things that we're working towards. I know there's no decisions that have been made on a lot of things, but I do believe it's very important that people hear the correct information. So on Tuesday, January 3rd, I was at Robinson. January 4th, I was at McNeil. January 5th at Beloit Memorial. January 10th, Even Start, Converse Elementary. January 11th, Hackett. January 12th at Gaston. January 23rd, I will be going to Cunningham. And so there's a list of people and list of schools that I will have to still get to yet. Naturally, as it pertains to my calendar and schedule, there's never I can't say never a dull moment. We also have some community conversations that we'll start to have as it pertains to kind of where we are right now. I've tentatively started to schedule some future conversations, February the 15th, with the Beloit Public Library Board, the GBEDC Board, on March the 8th, on March the 9th, the Greater Beloit Chamber, State Line Boys and Girls Club on March 15th, and so forth. And so the reason why I'm sharing this information with you is because although we are moving towards a conversation, there's future thoughts that we have to keep moving towards. And so that is part of my responsibility as a district administrator to make sure this work continues. Naturally, I've also had conversations with the community at large, and over this past week, I had the opportunity to meet with Cindy Lottie over at Even Start, Dr. Cole right across the street over at Lincoln Academy, Cecilia Denver over at Head Start as well, Scott Bierman, the president of Beloit College, thank you, Beloit College, and I've also heard a conversation with our WAC representative and ex-employee Kurt Hendrick, thank you, Kurt Hendricks. And so those are just some of the reports that I have from the superintendent. And then again, thank you, board, for allowing me this time.
Any questions for Dr. Garrison? Okay, thank you. We're now on to committee and other board reports. Business operations and finance.
I have nothing new to report out.
Teaching, Learning, Equity, and Pupil Services Committee.
Hi, yeah, this evening we met at 5:30 and we had a very thorough, wonderful update about our ARC literacy curriculum and its impact for K-5 and our springboard literacy pieces through 6-12. Just a couple of highlights, things that popped out to me as kind of exciting is just an emphasis on our K-5 as having an individualized approach to literacy, which is just an exceptional undertaking for a large district like ours, and it sounds like it's going very well. I'd like to also call out that our data this time last year in January for proficiency for K-5 was at 24%, but it has grown already this year to 34%, which is just a hair below the 35% goal that we have for the end of this year. So continuing on with that rigor through the end of the school year, hopefully we'll hit that 35% mark. And it was shared out like that next year's goal will be to hit 45% proficiency and the following year would be 55% proficiency, which as we're changing culture and practice, like are very reasonable and exciting, I think, benchmarks to see going on. And then just looking into a couple other things I wanted to highlight that I thought were pretty awesome. Just seeing action plans for each school informed by that local data. It sounds like there's been a lot of item analysis and deep dives into exactly what not only academic supports are necessary, but also like just test taking skills are necessary with some of the pre-ACT that we just kicked off this year. And I just also wanted to kind of lift up that we heard about just the focus on the importance of creating and cultivating legacy systems and structures. So all of these things were very exciting for me, and I wanted to take the time to share those out, but I would encourage anybody who missed that committee meeting to go back and watch the presentation. I thought it was outstanding. Do any board members have any questions on any of those items? All right, thank you very much.
The Governance Committee did not meet in December. We will be meeting in January. When we meet in January, we will address areas, kind of like we said, we use our governance meeting to get topics out and kind of keep us focused and aligned with our work with the key worker school boards and the Wisconsin Association of School Boards, the annual development tool. And we'll be talking about aligning some work and some things to be done to our strategic plan when we do meet in governance in January. D, legislative update.
My legislative update is attached, but the highlight there is that just to let everyone know that new education committees for both the Assembly and the Senate have been established. However, there are currently no items in either committee and no committee meetings scheduled for the month of January. The Policy Committee will meet next on Wednesday, February 1st at 5:30.
All right. Are we up to, yep, 7, which we moved up. BMHS Academy update.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing us time here with you this evening to talk about our academy structure at Beloit Memorial High School. I'm Emily Pels, the principal at Beloit Memorial High School, and with me tonight I have Deb Prouse, who is our Career Academy coach, and Monica Christopa, who is Chief of Communications. And so to start off, I'd just like to say that the academy system at Beloit Memorial High School is a community-connected approach to transforming the high school experience together with our community for our students so that we can ensure that they graduate from high school, college, career, and community ready. Okay, and so as we move forward through the presentation, it's really important to remind ourselves and center ourselves in the why for the work that we're doing with the academy system. And again, it is all centered around our students and doing what's right for students and ensuring that they have every opportunity to excel in this district and at Beloit Memorial High School. This means in the classroom, this means in the community, and then beyond. All of this work is really grounded in ensuring that students have rigorous, relevant experiences that expand relationships and their readiness. And ultimately, what we want to see through the academy model is that students are graduating college and career ready through career exposure and relevant learning opportunities, so that students really have true and authentic opportunities to discover their talents and their passion while earning college credits and industry certifications. And through the academy model, we expect to see increased academic achievement, improved preparation for college, career, and life, development of those 21st century skills, those soft skills that will get them ahead, especially in a career, industry certifications and college credits earned, increased earning potential, as well as improved graduation rates.
Good evening. Thanks for allowing me to speak a little bit about the portrait of a graduate. I've been before the board numerous times. You know the work that went into it, but we didn't just want it to be an infographic. We want it to be a living, breathing accomplishments of our students. So this year there was a true commitment in working with our community partners, talking about that portrait of a graduate and those skill sets. One of the ways you're going to see how this really came to fruition was with our Craftsman with Character program. And Board Member Winfield, I know you know of that. Deb will be talking a little bit more about that. But know that all communications that come out about the academies are tied around our Portrait of a Graduate through our curriculum, through our correspondence, and through our meetings with our community partners.
Yep, went too far. All right, so I get to talk about some of the fun stuff that's been going on and some of the really cool things that our students have been able to do. So everything, though, that I'm doing is centered around students and their experiences and getting them prepared for whatever they choose as they move forward outside of high school. These pictures just represent some of the activities that our students have done. So you see some students in our Craftsmen with Character program at CCI. You see some of our finance students talking to students at Fruzen about personal finance. You see some of our students who are interested in nursing attending University of Wisconsin-Rock County to learn more about their nursing program, which really is a cool program that just started where it's in connection with Edgewood College, so students can actually go to UROC for the first 2 years, UROC tuition, earn their way into the Edgewood program, take all of their nursing programs for a bachelor's degree in nursing at UROC from Edgewood professors, and they actually get they pay far less in tuition, $500 per credit versus $1,400 or $1,500 per credit, and they can get a Bachelor of Science in Nursing from Edgewood through UROC. So there's some really cool things. They've also gone to Black Hawk Tech, and we'll be visiting some of the programs that they have there, and not only nursing, but sonography and stuff like that. So we've got a variety of things going on in these pictures, but I thought it was just kind of nice to see our students out and about. They're excited to be out and about in the community and being able to kind of get in and do things. So you'll notice that I've got 6 comments in here from different students along the way. On this first page, Cortez was one of our students in Craftsmen with Character. He is really excited about the connections he made and the people that he met along the way and some of the adults that he was mentored by in the different facilities that he was in. He's also one that went, now I know why I'm supposed to learn fractions, Ms. Prowse. And it was really kind of cool that he had that experience. Amory has been active in our construction program, and she thought she knew what she wanted to do until she got into our construction program, and now she's really decided what she wants to do. She wants to be a tech ed teacher. I said, come back in 4 years. So Amory's excited about that as well. Dustin was another student in our Craftsmen with Character program. Whereas Cortez wants to own his own business and maybe use some of the things he learned in Craftsman as far as in the business that he starts, Dustin has decided, I want to be a welder. I love welding. I like being creative about it, and he was able to get a lot of exposure. He's actually got several different offers for youth apprenticeships because of this and because of his interest in that. Mason is one of our youth apprentices right now at Frito-Lay, and Mason is, he described it as life-changing. And for me, I was glad I was sitting down, because to hear his story, and I tell it in this quote, I don't want to read every quote to you, but it was really important to his family that he had this opportunity. So it was a really cool conversation I had when I spoke with him. Blake Greenwell is also one of our youth apprentices, and he is at the Morris Group. And at the Morris Group, he also he commented about how much this has changed his life. And he wasn't quite sure that he would have, gotten the experiences that he has gotten because of that, but he really wanted to point out that what he's learned most at his experience at the Morse Group is nobody knows everything, but when you're working together you can accomplish anything. And I think that that's kind of what we're talking about here in our community as well. None of us can do this alone, but together we can do a lot. So it was just a really cool statement by Blake as well. And then Anna's just this amazing kid that wants to try everything. And that's what she says she's gotten out of the academies, is she's learned about all these opportunities, and she'll try everything. And every time she tries something, she learns something new, and she considers other things. So she's taken construction classes and business classes and entrepreneurship classes and all of these things. And now she thinks she wants to be a sonographer, but she's had all of these opportunities to explore. and she's got purpose to what she's doing, which to me is really important for our kids to have, and for them to have it before they leave, and to be able to walk out with some idea of what they want to do or don't want to do. Because I've got students who decided they do not want to be construction because they don't want to work outside. And I have to move on. So, sorry, I get excited about that. Oh, we have 2 minutes. All right, I am going to hustle then. 3 I's in our academies, in our small learning communities, if we take away anything from that, it's the small learning communities, because as teachers then, we get to talk about our students in smaller groups. And through those 3 I's, we talk about an identity. We want our students to feel like they belong somewhere. We talk about intervention because if students leave us and they can't read and they can't do math, they can't do much. So we have to raise that bar, and we have to make sure that when our students are struggling, we know how to intervene and what we can do to make things better. And then the last is interdisciplinary, because we want teachers to teach through the lens and then move beyond. But right now we're really focusing on teaching through the lens. There's our academies. You've seen those before. I'll get out of the way.
And certainly the work that we've done around our academy model has been a journey. It will continue to be a journey. But we're thankful because we have a partnership with Ford NGL, who offers a framework for us to operate under as we work through our academy implementation. And what's really nice about having a framework is that it allows us to develop the academy structure to fit our students' needs and the needs of our community. So quickly, where we've been, all started in an explore phase where we formed an academy implementation team. We participated in a needs assessment to really gauge if the community was ready to engage in this work. Then moving on to the next phase, this is the phase where we really worked on developing those governance structures, both in the district and in the community. So we developed a partnership with the GBEDC as our convening organization. This is where we developed our portrait of a graduate, and very thankful for all who participated in that work. And then we established our steering committee. And then the next part of the phase 3, is a big portion of the planning. So we continued to work with our steering committee to define the roles and responsibilities of what that committee would be overseeing. We developed our tactical teams, and this is where we really engaged in the master planning for the academies. We also worked here to really refine our partnerships with the community, with our business partners, and with higher ed institutes. And phase 4, which is the phase that we're in now. So, so far we've worked really hard to intentionally implement wall-to-wall academies, meaning that all teachers are designated to an academy. All students are designated to an academy. Teachers teach the majority of their classes within their academy. Their class room makeup, their student makeup is at least 80% of students in their academy, and students are taking at least 50% of their classes in their schedule also within their academy. We continue to expand work-based learning opportunities that are aligned with our BMHS Career Academy. So we have always offered a lot of work-based learning opportunities for our students, but through our academy structure, we're really able to focus and funnel students into relevant learning experiences that are work-based learning experiences that meet the interests of the academies that they're in. Yep, and that's what I just mentioned there. So really briefly, oh, go ahead.
I just have one additional comment. We are having our designation day, and board member Schneider, as a member of the committee, will be helping us give awards out, and that's February 2nd. There was some changeover in leadership, not only in the city, but the GBEDC and ourselves. So the steering committee will be reconvening in April, with those leaders being a part of that, and they review the master plan and add feedback and input to that. So the steering committee's in existence. There's just a little pause, but again, you have a board member who's represented on that committee as well to share that news.
Okay, and then real quickly, where we're headed. So like Monica just mentioned, we're getting ready to celebrate and designate our master plan. Ms. Prowse is working on refining our pathways and developing aligned graduation plans for students. She's working very closely with workforce development data, with the community, with post-secondary partners on that work, and then she'll be bringing that work to our staff to work closely with them as well. We are in the process of organizing scaffolded work-based learning experiences and then developing a tracking system so that we can ensure that all students participate in those experiences. We're always working to get better at our practices in our small learning communities so that we can elevate the focus on building identity in our academies and primarily increasing student achievement. We're in the process of developing a data dashboard to monitor the outcomes of our academy implementation. That work is well underway. And we're also working on identifying essential components of what a senior portfolio may encompass. And then some celebrations quickly to share with you that we attribute some of this work to. So our attendance rates, while they're not exactly where we want them to be yet, they are on a positive trajectory up, which is really great. The number of students we have on track for graduation is increasing, so that means a decline in our failure rates and an increase in our GPAs. Something we're very proud of specific to CTE is that the district has outpaced the state in providing work-based learning opportunities for our students with 9.8% of our students participating in these opportunities compared to 3.4% across the state. We're working on increasing the number of students who are earning industry credentials. We already know that within our welding program, we're going to far exceed what we did last year. And I think that takes care of it for now. So thank you very much for allowing us the time to present this to you, and we'll open up for any questions if you have any. I know we're in a time limit.
Board members have questions?
I just had a quick one, if that's okay.
Start with Megan.
Sorry. Well, actually, one of my questions was going to be if our industry recognized credential rates had increased. So thank you for calling that out. And just for like my colleagues on the board who may not know that there's Act 59 dollars attached to that. So for every student who completes an industry recognized credential or certification, we get like a kickback from DPI up to $1,000 per student, which then funds the program. So I just thank you for doing such a great job incorporating that into our academies. I was curious, I love that there's a data dashboard. Is that going to include clearinghouse data about kids who complete like post, I guess, does that only track like 4-year completion, or are there associate degrees like tracked and all that wonderfulness on the data dashboard?
So we haven't worked out all of those details currently. Those are something that we're working on that and how we can get that information readily to put it or input it into our dashboard. But yes, we certainly want to track post-secondary outcomes for sure.
No, I think that's awesome, and thank you for such a great presentation and for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
I'll do my best to be brief. And I think you may have answered the question, but I just want to clarify. But before I ask, thank you for pulling together this presentation. I loved hearing about the students' experience and how impactful it was, not just to them, but to their families. So that's always awesome. So my question is, if I am passionate in science and business, but I have to commit to one academy, that's what I initially thought. But then you said at least 50% of your classes need to be in one academy, so you can have that crossover. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. We never want to limit any experiences or opportunities for students. The academies just allows an opportunity for students to really focus on the things that they are very interested in.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Other board members with questions?
No question, just a couple of comments, if that's okay, President Levy.
Hey, have your way.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. I just want to give thanks to you guys. It hasn't been a Winfield that came through the high school that wasn't appreciative to the staff. So, secondly, my daughter was a part of the craftsmanship. The only girl. The only girl. The only girl. I just had to say that 3 times. Trinity was different, and I think that Ms. Prowse and what she done with that program really brought something out of her. So I really appreciate that, because it was different to see her go do something she did not like to do. And it brought me to a place as my 43 years of living where I've had 6 children and they're all been great. But this one is special because she's willing to go through the trouble. So I just want to commend you guys on that. I'm proud of the program. I'm really looking forward to be nationwide and for Beloit to be the front runner of that. So keep up the good work.
Just to comment on that, we do have a video that will be coming out soon that just highlights our students, and here they get to share with that, but then Houston, the entire city of Houston's looking at this. Beloit, Kansas is looking at this. There's cities in Michigan. I get calls regularly asking about this program, so it's really cool. And some of the other things, we have local districts saying, wait, you guys are doing what? So it's really kind of cool because we get to share with what we're doing because it really is good for all kids. And that's pretty awesome.
All right, we'll have greater opportunities in the future to discuss more at length. But thank you for your work with the academies at Beloit Memorial High School. All right. So we are now to 5, consent agenda. Consent agenda. Is there anything that any board member like pulled off the consent agenda?
So here's the thing. I don't need it removed, which would require a separate vote, but I do have a question about the open enrollment seat allocation.
Okay.
All right. So my first question is, I'm curious, how does this process of designating spaces for annual open enrollment allocations change if we are close to or at capacity? So basically, the state requires that we set aside seats for open enrollment during this time period of like February 6th to April 28th. I can take that offline. Somebody can send me an email because I know we are.
Explain it. Just go for it now.
Oh, no. I'm just wondering how that, like, now we're fine. Come on up, Mrs. Beavers, because we're not at or near capacity. So we're going to hopefully vote to accept anyone who applies. But I'm just curious, and you can answer this offline, how that process changes if we are near or at capacity.
You kind of answered your own question, but DPI does give guide what you said about currently the situation with the school district of Beloit. DPI gives guidance on a formula you can use should you go to that route.
Perfect. And then my next question, I believe this is my last one, is that the regular open enrollment application period for the upcoming school year, so 23-24, is, like I said, February 6th to April 28th. Is there like a special open enrollment period for students that fall outside of that window? Or does it just not require allocation of seats if you're outside of that window?
So there's an alternate window, which would fall outside of those dates. They have to fill out an alternate application, and then the allocation of seats that you would be voting on tonight would not apply.
Got it. Thank you.
Just in one question, I know we're also too in districts where if we had limited size in our special education program, we would designate by the different programs we offer and how many seats are available in each.
Correct.
All right. But we're open. We're taking students, is what we're saying. Yep. All right. Okay. Any other questions about the consent agenda items, board members? All right. Is there a motion?
I'd like to move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Been moved by Board Member Miller, seconded by Board Member Amy Levy. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes unanimously. All right. That's what that means. Yeah. All right. 6A referenda.
So, first of all, thank you, board, for this additional conversation as it pertains to our referenda. We've been having conversations, as I stated in my superintendent's report, around referenda over the past few months here. I think that we are nearing closer conversations as it pertains to the will of the board from the aspect of different options, different questions that we have to kind of move through for your approval. With that being stated, I do believe that in our last conversation, as I just kind of kick off this conversation a little bit here, the board had a I shouldn't say flavor. What's the word I'm looking for? What's the word I'm looking for, Ms. Levy?
Wanted additional information.
No, what's the one word? Wanted different additional information as it pertains to other possibilities. We were at the time not prepared to give that information because that's not what we had prepared for. However, we had some time over this past week to draw up a different option that the board had mentioned as it pertains to an additional year in our operational question conversation. With that being said, we do have Lisa Voice in here with us, and then, of course, Kevin Mullen from Barrett, along with Mr. Duff, to present the information that was shared over the weekend, and also in your board report. And they will kind of give us an overview of this slide here as it pertains to additional information that you all requested. And then I'll turn it back over to Board President Levy for additional questions when needed.
Great to be back in person. Thank you. And we saved the best for last, right? Okay, so again, I'm Lisa Voisin from Robert W. Baird. We've been helping the district along the way as they make some decisions. And this is kind of the last meeting. And hopefully you've gotten all of the information and well educated on what an operating referendum is. We've talked a lot about that. But we really have come down to two options. First, what you're going to see on this report is nothing about question one. Question one will be the $19.5 million facilities question. That is taken care of. It is in the resolution. It will go alongside of either question two will be either option one or option two. Okay? So we're all clear on that. I'm not going to talk about the facilities. I'm going to talk about the operational referendum questions. Okay? So you have seen option one, operational referendum question, which is a 1 year ask for $14 million. That's nothing has changed in that one. We're looking at about the same taxes as everyone in the community has seen last year. It will be about the same this next year if we go with option one. Again, buys us time. It's a bridge to when we can get more information to possibly go back for another referendum in November of '24, 1 year. So then we talked about at the last meeting, what if we went an additional year? So 2 years. What if we asked taxpayers for additional taxes, not only $14 million in year one, but $9 million in year two? What we did is we kind of crunched the numbers and said, keeping that tax level. That was the idea, along with keeping that, which is on page 2, the sustaining that current programming and replenishing the fund balance. So essentially the same use of funds as we know it now, but we're having that second year. It gives us the opportunity to even wait longer if needed to go to referendum. So if we needed extra time in addition to 18 months, If we wanted 2 full years, we could do that, or we could go in 18 months. So we just talked briefly. It doesn't necessarily have to wait until 2025 for that option 2. So you could go a little bit earlier. And what we would do is layer. So say we go with option 2. The first year we levy 14 million. The second year we levy 9 million. We could go to referendum and layer something on top of that 9 million if you found you need it for your strategic plan initiatives. Because that's really the goal. The goal is let's fund our strategic plan initiatives along with the other initiatives that you have on that second page. So did that describe what we're talking about sufficiently? I'll take a pause and see if there's questions.
Right. So before we kind of start talking, what I'll say is that, we had a conversation. I think we had 5 board members. So we had a conversation. We kind of came to a consensus on where some things were at, but we wanted to see with a 1-year option and a 2-year option because we recognize that some things would change. Like I said, over the weeks, we've had multiple conversations. And so even as we kind of ask questions or go back and forth, what I'd like us to do during this conversation is, kick the tires on 1 year, 2 year, have that understanding of that since we already had got the capital situation out of the way. But then kick the tires on the 1 year, 2 year, kind of come to our consensus again, and then make our resolution towards what it is that we're going to do, because we have agreed that we're going to do something. And I think where we left was just wanting all board members to have input, and just to kind of talk our way through what might be necessary or the benefits of doing one or the other. And with that, we'll start with Board Member Levy.
Thank you, Board President Levy. So quick question and then a super brief statement. So for option 1, remind me again of where that would place our mill rate for the 1-year non-recurring.
Currently, your mill rate for 22-23, which is the year we're in, is $4.78.
$4.78.
Yep.
And so
Next
option
year,
1 would keep it the same.
Yep. For 23-24, it would be $4.78. Option 1 to be determined for the following year because we don't have information.
Right. And then the same question for option 2. So are you saying that it would be $4.78 for the upcoming year would be our mill rate with option 2, and then that following year it would remain at $4.78?
To the best of our knowledge.
Got it.
Knowing we don't have a state budget right now.
Yep.
We're doing the best with what we have. Could be lower, could be higher.
So my super brief statement, and then I'll yield the floor. I was the main one that was pushing to have a second year in the non-recurring referendum. And the rationale for me behind that was it's not either or, it's both and. We need to go to referendum because we need additional capital in our district, but we also need to find areas where we can reduce our spending in the district. And some of those things are timed. And so once we know that we need to make certain adjustments, they cannot contractually be made immediately. So the 2 years gives us more time to definitely make those changes, but still bring in the capital we need to execute our strategic plan, to supplement things that are already happening in the building, and to replenish our fund balance.
Other board members?
Not really a question, but I guess I just want to clarify. I mean, a lot of like the operational stuff that we're asking for isn't like a hoodwink kind of situation. It's like to continue funding things that we are funding. And I guess I've just want to make that clear because like as we're looking at these numbers, like the 14 million and like the 9 million, that's to sustain the work that we're doing. And so I just kind of building off of what Board Member Levy just said, we want to continue to fund operation of what we are doing while we look at like right-sizing pieces and consider necessary, potential cuts and things like that. So it is like a balanced approach. And so to that end, I came last week honestly prepared to vote for the resolution as stated for the 1-year bridge. I really like what Board Member Levy had to say about giving us some time to actually show that we can be effective with those dollars. Like we just heard, for example, not to go too far off tangent, but at our committee meeting, we just talked about like literacy improvement and how things go, we might see a spike and then just a little, sometimes you plateau a little bit and then it's like tiptoe up and then spike, and how progress is messy. So since we are a results-oriented, data-driven district, we might want to give ourselves that extra year to show our community, thank you for continuing to invest in and sustaining what we're already doing. And here's the progress we've been able to make in 2 years. So again, I really like both options. I think that point I just made is why I appreciate so much you putting together that option 2. And just again, to emphasize what Board Member Levy said, these are all things happening kind of in tandem with looking at that right sizing element as well. So I appreciate that both are very balanced approaches.
Other board members?
Yeah, I guess I would just say that, I don't disagree with what that second year option accomplishes, right? It gives you a little farther runway, right, to do some of those things. And I guess my pushback on that would be, I think we need to recognize the need for more immediate action. And I think under a one-year option, your next kick at that is still 18 months away. And if we can't show results in 18 months, I think we risk going in front of the public and saying, hey, we want 2 years worth of money. We don't know what we're going to spend year 2 money on quite yet. But, we're going to have a plan for it. And I think we risk disenfranchising some of the voters that say, well, proof is in the pudding. Show us what we're doing for year 1. And I think that puts us in a better position to ask for money in November of 2024.
May I ask a clarifying question?
Go. Yeah, this is our discussion because they've given us the numbers, so it's
Right.
kind of for us to get there.
So, Brian, do you see a difference in asking for 2 years amount up front, or what you just said, asking again that second year for an amount? And then the only thing that I would add, just so we're all on the same page, our largest expense are our human resource. Not the human resources department, but our human resources, which are hugely valuable. And contractually, we can't make immediate changes to that largest expense. It's something that you got to give notice and time, et cetera. So I just wanted to add that point to the conversation.
No, that's a good point. I recognize that, and I think we've already started to do some of the pre-work that's going to get us to that situation. So I don't mean to say that, we can walk and chew gum at the same time, and we're doing it. So, credit to the rest of the board for that as well. But I think we can still say, here's our plan, because unfortunately right now we don't have enough runway before we're going to ask voters to vote in April to say, here's the 112 different ways we're going to spend the money, reduce expenses, kind of the whole plan. We just don't have enough time to do that. We have an idea of what we're going to do. And when you talk about this human capital aspect of it, that's our biggest expense. We may not be able to execute on whatever that plan looks like by the second ask, but we could say we know what we're going to do, and now we've got to wait that timeline out. So I think again, it's not about executing it on time, but it's about convincing people that we're being good stewards of the funds. So. That's just where I'm coming from, but all perfect points.
Did you have I had a question for Dr. Garrison. So to Board Member Anderson's point, we talk about making sure that we know where funds are going. I recall seeing a list of operational pieces, and I think some of them are 1 and 2 year. So Dr. Garrison, because I don't want to, Dr. Garrison, would you say from an administrative standpoint, are you clear on where those second year funds largely would go? And if so, are they in line with the documentation we've already been presented?
So the second year funds, since we have to draw up this second year opportunity here, we will want to keep it in the same bucket as our sustaining current program around social emotional behavior and academic achievement. And because we wouldn't just make it up as it pertains to where the funds would go. We would keep it in that bucket around student achievement. That's where we would keep that money flowing for the second part of year 2.
Can I add something?
Sure.
There was also discussion on the board to try and get our fund balance to 20%. So a good chunk of that 9 million would get it to the 20% goal for fund balance. Because we were only going to get to the minimum of 14% with the option 1. This would get us to the 20, which is kind of the generalized goal. And then the additional 3 million, it gives us, there will be another round of curriculum purchases for the next year that is the funding is unidentified. And then the other thing that, from a business manager's point of view, we have this huge ESSER cliff coming, and this kind of gives us a little bit of cushion for that unknown expiration of the ESSER funding in that year.
One last thing I will add, and I think I talked about this before, but remember, that second year, 9 million, if the state comes through with what the DPI is recommending in terms of funding for schools, if you guys, cut expenses because you're resizing your district or right-sizing your district, all of those things that kind of line up, and we get to the fall of '24, and now it's time to levy that second year, you don't have to levy the full amount. So we'll be able to shake it out and really have a better picture when it comes to October of '24. Right now, this is what we know, based on what we know, which is,
what we have.
pretty good, but not great.
Are you speaking to 1 year or 2 years now?
This is the 2 year, so on that second year, even the first year, you wouldn't have to levy the full amount. And some districts don't. But this is our best estimate of what the needs are right now.
So when it comes to, I guess, so for me, I feel like I see what you're saying, that there's not, we haven't had said year 2, this is what we're spending on, but it was my understanding that we were going to continue to fund that list of, kind of those, like Dr. Garrison said, and that's why I wanted to confirm that academic and social emotional piece, right? And then it sounds like, for me, as, just in my own personal life, I like to be proactive so if I know, man, I got a pay cut coming, in 2 years, I want to make sure I have some wiggle room, and it sounds like that $9 million could be our wiggle room to avoid having to take some drastic, I just don't like acting with urgency. So I kind of like having that extra length of rope to work with. And I appreciate, too, that you pointed out, I don't think we're in any position where, if we're good and Joint Finance Committee acts differently than it has for the last 10 years and we can, fully fund special ed, for example, and things like that, then cool. Let's not worry about that $9 million then. So that's kind of where I'm at.
All right. Board Member Spencer Anderson, you were trying to get in earlier.
So I was unable to attend when you guys were talking about this, but my main question would be is that the committee that brought this to us, the different options, they presented originally as a 1 year. What do you think they would have thought? How would things change if they presented as a 2 year? How would their viewpoints have changed possibly?
So at the current, as stated from the last conversation with the ad hoc committee, of course, we make a recommendation to the board. That's what we did. We made a recommendation to the board based off of the ad hoc committee's conversation and the 1 year information that was presented over the past conversations here at the board level. The board then, of course, like you all have the opportunity to weigh in on that and make changes to the recommendation. And so naturally, I can't move this back forward to the committee until, ad hoc committee, I should say, until the board decides on what direction they want to go in. And then I can go back to the ad hoc committee and let them know this is the direction that the board is going in. The group itself was in agreement that we should go to referenda. And I say referenda because it was 2 questions that they both had agreed to.
One of the things I would add, to your question, Board Member Anderson, is that, as 7 board members, and we have been receiving, the business operations, finance reports, and everything else like that. I think it was clear to me that we would need to take a step towards a referendum, and part of our goal in providing that information and asking the ad hoc committee to come together was to get the conversation beyond the 7 of us with other people who live in Beloit, have vested interests, them having the same access to the information that we had at the same time. And like you said, because of where we are at, that, you know, our goals shifted when we had to hire a superintendent and our facility study didn't come through. That, you know, we've gotten to the conversation as quickly as we could, but they've had the opportunity to examine the same financials, understand the same things about referendum, where our fund balance is, and their suggestion to us is, yep, you should ask for money because you need it. And I think, like I said, that their conception was you're going to have it's probably going to have to do it in 2 steps because there's some pieces that we're looking for that we don't have all of it together. So like I said, receiving that recommendation, it's an advisory recommendation, but I think like now that it's come back to us, to stop and ask these questions about 1 year versus 2 is just a space where, you know, as all of us are weighing in together, that because we've already voted that we're going to ask a question, we've crafted one, but just again now as we get ready to make this, you know, as we come to consensus, that, you know, we might end up exactly where the committee was, but the committee's like ask for the money and, you know, address the needs that are there. And then I think right now where we're at is having received their recommendations, trying to make sure that we, the 7 of us, are in agreement and come at what we think is the best ask for where we're at. The first opportunity is April 2023. And I've kind of said this is that, you know, it's possible that these actions could have been taking place a year or 2 before now, if people are looking at the financials. And so I think we needed money yesterday. We need money today, and we're going to ask for it. And if you don't give it to us, we're still going to have to ask for it again on in 2024. And so as we look at where we're at with this 1 year or 2 year, and there's some variables that we could, you know, kind of change and put things in different place, but just, you know, what's going to give us the greatest amount of stability and then able to take the next step. Because if we, like I said, as we continue to have to ask or go to the public for a next step, you know, I think like earlier tonight, there was conversation about don't ask twice. Well, we have to ask now because this is our only opportunity to ask. And because we have to ask now, that means we're going to have to ask twice. You know, as an example, with some of our ESSER funding, you know, we had our graduation in the at Beloit Memorial, and because the weather was indoor, but that was before the acoustics and the audio visual were together, and that was less than the quality experience we want to provide for our graduates. So that has been addressed, but of course there's HVAC stuff that hadn't been done yet, and that was teed up. And so we've got some HVAC projects that were assigned, but when we ask this question, we'll be able to move some funds and have even more of our ESSER funds to address other areas. So I think that like that's the part that we're trying to get to is like, what's the best ask that we make for our community, because we might have to ask them to take another step. But, you know, controlling, you know, what do you ask for now to make sure that we've provided the stability we're seeking to provide, and the fact that, you know, there's a time factor there, and what does that mean? So, I mean, but like I said, you know, the option, what they gave us was, I would just acknowledge that part of the answer that we were given is based on, like, there's parts that they didn't know, and we just, you know, couldn't provide at the time. And even, like, it just goes from, do you need to ask for a referendum to, do you need 2 questions, you need 1? And we're narrowing in on that conversation, and we know tonight we have to make a decision so we can make our timelines. Just things to think about. Board Member Winfield. Or you want to go first, Mr.? I don't know.
There was just a second question I had for you. Then I'll, like, I'm good. But my next question, though, is because, like, the only reason I brought up on what they would potentially be thinking for the group that brought this forth to us is that how much harder is it going to actually achieve that ask that we're doing for 2 years instead of 1 year? Because they're probably, like Brian said, they're looking at the commitment level of it. They're like, okay, we want you, like, we'll give you this 1 year opportunity. We want to see that change, something happening, and then, like, then ask for more. Because then they can actually be like, okay, there's something physical, tangible there that's actually going on. So my question would be is, how much harder for option 2 would it be to actually achieve that?
Yeah, I would say like one of the things that I'm thinking about as we this kind of fits into the whole conversation though, is like one of the questions I do remember is like, hey, what is our number? Like, what do we need? And that was one of the things I think that was hard to nail down in the first presentation, even as we go here, because the variables of what we're asking. The governor hasn't come out yet with his preliminary budget. That's February-ish. We haven't come out with what we're hoping to be our interim budget in June, and then what the state government actually decides around July 1, and then what we actually do October 10th. So all those other question marks are there. So when we get back to like what do we need, that's still a question. One of the other things I'll say is that as we've talked to this, that we have already taken actions on administrative contracts and preventing rollovers and issuing 1 year to administrators, so we're not so far stretched out in our commitments. The reconfiguration conversations are in process, and that's going to yield a different result than the number of buildings that we have. Then we get to that right sizing conversation about if we've got roughly 850 employees, or we've lost 25% of our students, we need less employees. And so at the same point in time where we're having an information campaign to explain whatever we decide tonight, why we're asking for that, in February, March, and then the voters are going to vote in April, but we will have been taking these simultaneous actions in February and March where we have made decisions, because there were this many schools, now there's X amount of schools, which is different than what we started with. So I think that part is going to be demonstrated along the way, that people can see we're taking actions. And so, I think like that's that first part about where they're at and what they're going to see. The biggest thing that I'm thinking about right now too is, one, I know because we've taken out a fund balance for 2 years, like as long as that we adequately restore that fund balance or have that space. I know, like I said, that this first one gets us to 14. There's another way to get to 20 versus where we're at, and that's something we can discuss also. But having to go into fund balance twice, and like I said, I don't think we'll be there again because we're going to make other changes. But those are, just those concerns, because like I said, and I guess also too, I'll just say like the organizational stress. As Luke shared with us that, they're going to have the facility master plan, and hopefully that'll be received to us in September. That just means like in September, we'll be making these types of decisions again in that compressed timeline, because, we're trying to get ready for November. It's just the asking time. So I'm just thinking about the organizational stress to kind of provide a relief for the people in the organization to feel like, okay, something's been adequately handled, and it's not just like, oh, you just missed it and it's coming back around, that swing. But I understand what you're saying about the urgency of now, too. You don't want to delay also, so there's a question there. Board Member Schneider.
There are pros and cons to both the 1 year and the 2 year. But the one thing that I'm continually hearing from everybody is looking for stability and trying to maintain stability. And going with the 2 year option would be showing the community that the mill rate is going to be consistent for 2 years. After that, there's a change, especially with the understanding that if things go, the state really comes out and does some great things, that we don't need to ask for that much money the second year, because we don't know what's happening. But it does give us that authority or that ability to maintain some stability in the mill rate, as well as the time we need maybe to put together a very detailed plan of what we're doing next, based on where we are at that time.
Board Member Winfield, you had it.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to thank you guys for presenting this. As a community member, I was here I was not part of it. I voted for the first referendum with not all of the information like this, and I just want to appreciate it's the fact that you're giving me two options. What I've heard everybody say, what's really, it's playing in my head, is time. Just thinking, I was at a barbershop this weekend, and I was discussing, as being on the board, and all of the fabulous people I get to work with and stay here and meet till 11 o'clock at night. And they had some very, very choice words for me and my colleagues. But as in me being the person that I am to those individuals, I had to make sure they understood. Jawan, I don't just be with anybody. These individuals on this board is the stable I've seen in a very long time. I just think what we need to do now is let the community know that we've done our part with hiring the superintendent. We got a lot of the community coming to meetings and being engaged in a lot of things that we do. So when I think about time, it's time for the community to say, hey, well, okay, what do we need to do? We want to make sure we're good and stable from here on out. Me personally, I don't think 1 year does that. I think that if we can really talk to the community, to the masses, and let them understand that, hey, like we've looked at everything that we can do, not the state, not the government, not little lady that's on Facebook bashing all of us, but in a sense of this board coming together, working together with Dr. Garrison and his team, getting a true understanding of what we need to do to be sustainable. I think we figured that out. That's my opinion.
Well, I also kind of just hit on the tax impact again too. There's, going from 1010 to 478 is a real swing. Like I said, 54% for some taxpayers. The thing I'm concerned about also is like I said, we've decided we're going to take some action because no action would mean falling to zero. And even though if you've paid, $1,800 and then you drop to around $800, dropping to zero is zero, and then asking someone to give you something past zero, I mean, it's like if it's a $1 increase, it's a $1 increase. If it's a $1,000 increase, it's a $1,000 increase. So in the 2-year option of whatever people are paying this year as those tax statements came out is what they would pay the next 2 years, and understanding that there's going to be more. Because even in the 1-year option, if it's 478 in the first year, well, the next year when we come back around, it's going to be 478 or something else. So that's kind of that space. I just, like I said, we're mindful that these are all the children in Beloit that are in the school district. We understand our decline in enrollment. We understand the learning environment and when our classrooms and programs are meeting expectations and when they're not meeting expectations. But regardless, these students that we have are still here and they still have to be provided an education. So all those factors are in consideration. Let's open it one more time if people have other thoughts that they want to share on 1 or 2 year, and then let's try to determine our consensus on where we're landing at, and then let's craft a motion after we kind of understand where we're at. So I'll give everybody one more time if you want to, kick the tires again.
The only tire that I need to kick is just like feeling like obligated to point out that the state budget surplus is now currently at $6.5 billion. And as a taxpayer, I'm extremely frustrated by that, but I'm happy that as a community member, I'll know that my property taxes are going directly to sustain academic and social and emotional programming that will help every child in my community.
I'll just remind you that what they're projecting about that 6.5 is that a lot of that is tied up into the market. So if there's a market swing, that 6.5 might not be there. So we've got a lot of things to work with, though.
And we've had a billions of dollars surplus for a very long time while our kids are going without, especially dealing with like COVID, and I'm not just talking about our kids in Beloit, like across Wisconsin, and I think it's morally absurd. But I am fully supportive, I think, of option 2 at this point, just because, again, as a taxpayer, I appreciate the predictability, and I feel that we've been very transparent in exactly what that funding is going towards sustaining. And I also like the ability that it gives us to be proactive and make sure that we're okay, and we don't just, if someone's asking me for money, I want to make sure that I'm giving it to, I don't want it to just be like a short-term loan and then come back because like now we're in a desperate crisis again. I'd like this to be like, okay, we're going to avoid potentially a cliff from losing that ESSER funding, and we can ease our way in very purposefully and proactively, give ourselves time to make sure all the planning, all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted, et cetera, to transition into where we'll need to go into that year 3 in order to continue to adequately, academically, and kind of whole child offer that support to our kids.
Okay. So as I'm just kind of keeping consensus here, I'm going to put you in the first one on the board, option 2. All right.
Is there a reason we're going through with consensus since we're going to take a formal vote?
Yes. The reason we're going through a consensus is because
Because I'm ready with a motion. I definitely don't want to cut off any of my colleagues if they need to kick any other tires. But I'm ready to move forward with a vote.
All right. Okay. So this is the thing. I think it's important for us to kind of understand where we're at before we vote, because there's some very confusing language the way these resolutions have to be offered. And I think that it does just help for board members to see where we're at.
I appreciate that, but I think that's what the discussion can be used for. If there's a motion on the floor, then if anyone has any questions about what we're voting for, I think that would be an appropriate time to have those questions answered.
Okay. Thank you for that. Other board members, where do you want to weigh in on your consensus?
Yeah, I'll weigh in. I'll just say, a lot of the conversations about stability, and I can appreciate that. But what we've talked about is stability of mill rate and stability of revenue. And my fear is that in our haste to gather stability on those fronts, there's going to be a perception of stability from an expense side. And that's where we don't need stability, because that's where decisions still need to be made. And so, and it's true that I'll concede that out of these numbers, and somebody can jump right in and correct me if I'm wrong, I won't be offended because it happens a lot. Year 1, $14 million referendum. Let's just say $7 million of that is rough numbers to replace
fund balance.
The fund balance, right? So that ask is not, in my mind, it's not a spending ask, right? Because the money's already been spent. We're trying to replace it. And the thought is we go into a budget cycle next season. We say, look, we're not even spending that $7 million. It's not spendable dollars. It's in our fund balance, right? And so year 2, another $6 million. I mean, it's spendable, but if you're selling it as we're replacing fund balance, what you're saying is our intention is not to spend this in our next budget cycle because we're replacing fund balance. Because the idea is if you, once it's given to us, we ask them, once it's in the fund balance, there's nothing to stop this board, subsequent boards, because boards change, of spending that fund balance again. And we don't need permission from anybody to spend those dollars once they're in the fund balance. We just pass the budget. So that's the reason, as we get to consensus, is that I think, that I can't support something longer than 1 year.
Okay. And I'll just add too, so I got Brian Anderson on option 1. For understanding, because we kind of got to this space last year, is as we are presently composed, the 7 of us today, when we get to April, we will be a different board. Board member Levy's up for election. Board member Winfield is not running. So we could have 2 new members or 1 new member. And that is a different board. And even as we make different actions budgetary-wise between now and April, before we set the budget in October, there's possibly 1 or 2 people that are not here now that'll have some option on that. So that is a part of what's changing. So that is there. Another, just kind of throwing in as you're talking about the fund balance, and you're right about those additional funds, that it also, the fund balance is also going to be a factor when we do ask, because our numbers are going to be at a place. And it'll be the 14% or 20%. And like we talked about our rating, is that they will be aware of the actions that we are taking or understanding where we're at, because we won't be, technically in the best space when we're asking, but there's other considerations that are going. So I got you down as option 1. Board Member Winfield?
Option 2.
Anderson, Spencer.
Honestly, I'm kind of torn between the two, because I understand the whole aspect that people want to see us do something first before asking for more. But I also do see that having that 2-year bridge will smooth out that trend. So instead of just being a sudden drop off, it's a little bit shallower, making it easier on people that are doing our financial stuff. So they're not sitting in their office sweating bullets every day trying to figure out how we're going to do this. Like I said, I am torn between the two. I could go either way. I'm going to be more up to whatever it seems like the board wants to do in this scenario, because I'm just torn right now.
So I'll hold you out, and I'll come back to you at the end before we make the motion, right? So you kind of see where we're leaning in. I mean, which is it's a space. I'm going to go with option 2. Miller, Board Member Levy, do you want to wait or no?
No, thank you.
Okay. Board Member Schneider.
I'm also torn between the two. I see the advantages of both. I think option 2 is the better option for the school district and for the students of Beloit.
So Board Member Anderson, I don't think Board Member Levy is going to participate. She's just going to offer her, she's going to offer her motion, I think, after a while. But that's it's kind of, Board Member Anderson, Brian is on one side, and you got 4 in the other space. You with a space to lean in.
All right. If we do go with option 2, we do have to realize that we're going to have a little bit harder time to actually asking for that. So just
you mean like how the question is structured and what that, or what part?
Or just gaining support really for it. Because from the people I've talked to before, they've expressed concerns. They're like, well, we want to see something happening before we give more. But there's also other people that are like, well, we completely understand that your district definitely needs the money. So I guess I'll support option 2.
Okay. So kind of what I'll say is, Board Member Levy, I want to thank you for your patience. I know as an individual, you may have been ready to move forward. I think, again, what I'll say to our community, what's important is that, for us as a board, how we work through things, that we do take our time to study the issue. We know that we are dealing with your finances, not just our own in our own pocket. And then for the 7 of us, that we respect each other, we work together, we make decisions, not all difficult decisions. Not all easy decisions to make, but in this case, in a very quick fashion, but not without the diligence needed. We've gotten the issue in front of the public, worked with Dr. Garrison and worked with our financial consultants and the remaining financial service staff that we do have. Thank you, Mark, for your time. But we're trying to decide big things for our community. and we want to be able to demonstrate our unity in doing these things. So it's important how we get there. So at this time, if anyone wants to offer a motion and to pay attention, because I know that Dr. Garrison has given us, working with the consultants, there's a way that these motions need to be made. So be mindful of that as you make your motion and make sure that we understand what we're doing.
I move approval of option 2, which includes the capital question and the 2-year non-reoccurring question as outlined in item G, H, and I on this evening's agenda.
A second.
Who was the second? I missed that.
Me.
All right.
Lil G.
So that's a motion by Board Member A. Levy, seconded by Board Member Winfield. Any discussion?
I do have one more comment to make. So I just wanted to go back to, so I wanted to thank you, Lisa, Mark, and Kevin for all the information you've given us. And I just wanted to clarify, we've never gone to operational referendum ever, right? Is that correct? Which puts us in the minority of districts. And so just to kind of be responsive to my colleagues on the board, I would just say as a parent in the district, I don't like the idea of my children's education being put financial crisis to financial crisis to financial crisis. And for that reason, for me, it actually seems like, again, as a taxpayer and a parent in the district, much more palatable to vote for 2 years, because I feel like the next time if we need to go to referendum again, it's not going to be to put out an imminent fire. It's going to be to just be sustainable. And so I guess those are just my final thoughts. Thanks.
And I would like to request a roll call vote, please.
Okay. Even as we, just to add further discussion, I think another part, like I said before, is there are a number of things that, on the board that people might disagree about, but I think that this is another one of those things that, that if you examine some of the issues that are before our board, that people would say, like, there's really only one side, that we need to do something, or we've been doing things one way, and we need to change the way we're doing it. Even as we go forward in the vote, we already decided that we would have a capital question. We've already decided that that we were going to address the operational question, and we're just trying to decide if it should be 1 year or 2 year. So we've worked through our process, and the option that's in front of us is the option 2 option. And then even when we come to the place where we might have disagreements about which way we should move forward, that we all respect each other, we'll make a vote, and the vote is the vote, and then we just move forward. So that's where we're at this time. So if there's no more discussion, I'm going to ask Ms. Shope, can you give us 1 minute? Okay. All right. All right. To make sure all that other stuff happened. Ms. Shope, can you give us a roll call vote, please?
Yes. May I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
Does there need to be included in the motion the portion to decline option 1?
Well, this is the other part of just need to understand the consultants and how things need to be stated for the resolution.
So we can't. So what we can't do is have two different operational conversations going on at the same time. So if we move to option 2, as stated, we would need to follow the guidance of our team, which is to move to decline option 1, and then of course move to approve option 2, if that's the will of the board.
So I think what you're saying in short, for option 2 to be pursued, first we need to deny option 1, and then
May I ask a clarifying question?
Go for it.
Option 1 was never presented as a motion, so why would it have to be declined?
You can table option 1.
But why would it even need to be tabled? It was
an
a
agenda
part of the discussion, but there was no formal action taken on option 1, so I'm just.
So the bond attorney just said, because it's on the agenda, it's an agenda item, you just table option 1. And you move to option 2, but you have to approve each individual resolution within option 2.
No, I did that with the capturing of G, H, and I, because they're all listed there on the agenda.
I think this is one where, like, the exact explanation you're getting might not be exactly, like, this is the part where we're leaning towards the lawyer or the bond attorney to do it as they told us to do it.
She says, the bond attorney will say, table option 1, and she'll say, I think it's great that you're voting for option 2, but each resolution should be stated as a motion. So G would be motion to approve initial resolution, roll call vote. Motion to approve resolution authorizing, you read that motion, roll call vote. Motion to approve the resolution providing for, roll call vote. That's how it's written out in the minutes from the bond attorney.
So just final point of clarification. So as outlined in G, H, and I, because they're written in the agenda, that's insufficient, is what you're saying?
According to the bond attorney, yes, you have to
Okay.
read the actual motions.
Excellent. Then we would need to vote the current motion down and then restate, and I am more than happy to read all of that out.
Right, that's what I was saying about the the exactness of the motion when it's made. So, we haven't even voted on this one yet.
Correct.
All right, so the first thing we'll do, I guess, is vote down the current motion. Mr. Shope, give a roll call vote, please.
Yes.
The current motion is to go with
No, we gonna do that.
motion, go with option.
Joanne Winfield.
Aye.
The resolution's in that motion.
Okay. We'll
I'm
keep
sorry,
that way.
I didn't hear what you said. Was that a nay?
Yes, it wasn't. Wait, before we go on, we're voting down the motion, correct?
So what we overall, we need to make these resolutions have to be read a certain way, and the way it's read is insufficient. So the action that we said we're gonna take is we're gonna vote down this motion.
Gotcha.
And then it's gonna be restated, so option 2 can happen as it's supposed to happen.
Nay.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Greg Schneider,
Nay.
Amy Levy,
No.
Brian Anderson,
Nay.
Spencer Anderson,
Nay.
Megan Miller,
Nay.
Sean Levy.
Nay.
Motion did not carry. It failed.
Is there a motion?
Perfect. Yes, there is. I move to table option 1 as listed in the agenda and to approve option 2, which includes the capital question and the initial resolution authoring general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $19,500,000 as outlined in item G.
Second?
I don't know that that's exactly the way it's supposed to go again. Okay,
President, do you have a second?
just a minute.
Oh.
We have a motion by A. Levy, a second by M. Miller, and discussion. I'm going to say I got some discussion first. Board Member Anderson, Brian Anderson.
Yeah, so just to clarify, that motion covers solely the capital
Let's do them one step at a time.
referendum for G. Thank you.
All right, so, like, just to be honest.
Could I get a clarification of the motion? Could I ask Board Member Levy to repeat her motion, please?
Absolutely.
Let's
My
go one
motion.
step at a time.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Okay.
So my motion is to table option 1.
Right. Right, we need to go one step at a time.
No, you're fine. My first motion of the evening is to table option 1.
All right. I told you we're going to go like that. No, that's what I was saying. All right. So we're on a discussion. make sure we're on the right motion. Well, there's not clarity right now. There's just. we're
The
trying to-
current motion is to table option 1.
Okay.
That's it.
And the second is by Megan Miller?
Yes.
All right. And we were having discussion, and now we're, Ms. Shope, could we have a roll call?
Yes. Amy Levy,
Aye.
Megan Miller,
Aye.
Joanne Winfield,
Aye.
Greg Schneider,
Aye.
Brian Anderson,
Aye.
Spencer Anderson,
Aye.
Sean Levy.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
All right, second step.
My next motion of the evening is to approve option 2, which includes the capital question. Do you want me to stop there? The capital question outlined in G, initial resolution authorizing general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $19,500,000.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved by Board Member A. Levy, seconded by Board Member Joanne Winfield. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Oh, we have a roll call vote, please.
Amy Levy,
Aye.
Spencer Anderson,
Aye.
Brian Anderson,
Aye.
Greg Schneider,
Aye.
Megan Miller,
Aye.
Joanne Winfield,
Aye.
Sean Levy.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
My next motion of the evening is to authorize the school district budget to exceed revenue limit by $14 million for the 2023-2024 school year and by $9 million for the 2024-2025 school year for non-reoccurring purposes.
A second.
It's been moved by Board Member A. Levy, seconded by Board Member Joanne Winfield. Is there any discussion? Mrs. Shope, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Greg Schneider,
Aye.
Joanne Winfield,
Aye.
Spencer Anderson,
Aye.
Megan Miller,
Aye.
Brian Anderson,
Nay.
Amy Levy,
Aye.
Sean Levy.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-1.
So I have a question before I potentially give my last motion. How is I different from what we handled in G?
That's a good question. So you're authorizing the bonds, you're authorizing to exceed the revenue limit, and you're providing for a referendum. So you're saying we are going to referendum in April. Those are the 3 different resolutions.
Got it. I feel like I should have done I first, but I move to provide a referendum election on the questions of the approval of an initial resolution authoring the issuance of general obligations bonds in an amount not to exceed $19,500,000.
And keep going.
And the resolution authorizing the School District of Beloit to exceed revenue limits by $14 million for the 23-24 school year and by $9 million for the 24-25 school year for non-reoccurring purposes.
Budget. You want clarification? That's budget.
Second.
These people are all like that. This has been moved by Board Member Levy and seconded by Board Member Miller. Is there any discussion? I do have an item for discussion. I don't know if this was a slip. You said School District of Beloit in the motion. Recommended action says budget. Just make that clarification.
Thank you. Please amend my motion.
All right. So with that amendment there, Mrs. Shope, could we have a roll call vote? Any other items for discussion before? All right. Mr. Shope, a roll call vote, please.
Yes. Megan Miller,
Aye.
Joanne Winfield,
Aye.
Brian Anderson,
Nay.
Spencer Anderson,
Aye.
Amy Levy,
Aye.
Greg Schneider,
Aye.
Sean Levy.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-1.
Okay. All right, I think we're done now. That's all of it. Okay. All right. Thank you. For your help. Okay, we're now at future board meeting dates. Governance Tuesday, January 24th at 5:30 p.m. Policy Committee meeting Wednesday, February 1st at 5:30 p.m. Business Operations and Finance Tuesday, February 7th at 5:30 p.m. Human Resources Tuesday, February 7th at 6:30 p.m. Regular board meeting at Tuesday, February 7th at 7 p.m. Move to executive session here, and we will be adjourning from executive session. A motion may be made and a vote taken to convene the Board of Education in closed session pursuant to Section 19.85, parentheses 1, parentheses C, relative to considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility.
So moved.
Moved by Board Member Schneider. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Megan Miller. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mrs. Shope, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Megan Miller,
Aye.
Brian Anderson,
Aye.
Joanne Winfield,
Aye.
Spencer Anderson,
Aye.
Greg Schneider,
Aye.
Amy Levy,
Aye.
Sean Levy.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.